Chapter 12:12. Brother Chaotic Sky, your disciple is indeed outstanding. He is even more talented than the other divine princes. He will definitely become the leader of the younger generation of the human race. In the void, the great emperors were paying attention to the Sky Azure virtual world. One of them spoke, and his voice was heard by all the other great emperors. Chaotic Sky Great Emperor was one of the top great emperors of the human race. He was very powerful and was the master of Gulwankong, who was ranked first on the Heaven Ascension list. Being in the lead for a while is nothing. Only by being in the lead all the time can you truly be in the lead. After all, some geniuses stand out right from the start. However, there are some geniuses who show their talents at the start, but continue to accumulate strength and eventually explode, shocking the world with a single brilliant feat, Emperor Chaotic Sky said slowly. The other great emperors agreed with him. Geniuses were different. Some geniuses displayed superhuman abilities from the moment they were born, advancing all the way. However, some geniuses were mediocre at first, but as time passed and their cultivation increased, they became more and more outstanding. They would constantly erupt and amaze the world, eventually catching up and even surpassing them. But no matter which one it was, only those who could consistently perform outstandingly in the end were true geniuses, and not those who flashed by like shooting stars. For example, in the Sky Azure virtual realm, some geniuses who had comprehended sword intent in a short period of time were immediately ahead of others and ranked first or second on the galactic genius list. Geniuses who had comprehended sword intent later were ranked behind with the same number of genius points. If they wanted to surpass them and reach a higher ranking, they could only obtain more genius points. The Sky Azure virtual world was fair. It didn't give special treatment to those who comprehended sword intent first. Just as Chaotic Sky Great Emperor said, being in the lead for a while was nothing. Being in the lead all the time was the real lead. Outside the wooden bridge of the Night Dark tribe, there were genius swordsmen everywhere in the wilderness. They worked together in groups of 3 to 5 to hunt the red-eyed wolves. It was completely different from the day before. There weren't many red-eyed wolves in the wilderness. Yesterday they could have flaunted their power, but today they were in trouble. The red-eyed wolves were still ferocious. Some geniuses were killed and revived under the resurrection steel in the Night Dark tribe. After half a day the geniuses were in an awkward situation. Once they saw the red-eyed wolves, they would rush over in groups of 3 to 5. Under such circumstances, it was impossible to kill more red-eyed wolves, and it might even cause unnecessary conflicts. Fighting over a red-eyed wolf was a laughable matter in the eyes of some geniuses. Therefore, these geniuses ventured deep into the wilderness. A red-eyed wolf rushed towards Chu-Mu. Light flashed in Chu-Mu's eyes as he raised his sword. Just as he was about to kill the red-eyed wolf, a few people rushed over from the side. 2 of them blocked in front of Chu-Mu with their backs facing Chu-Mu, while the other 3 rushed towards the red-eyed wolf. Chu-Mu was speechless. The 5 people who had killed the scarlet-eyed wolf turned around. One of them looked at Chu-Mu with a cold smile. It was Chiu Minglei, a disciple of the Dark Knight Sword sect. Chiu Minglei raised his eyebrows and smirked as if he was provoking Chu-Mu. Sorry, you're too slow. The other 4 were probably also disciples of the Dark Knight Sword sect. They all had mocking expressions. Chu-Mu raised his eyebrows and a light flashed in his eyes. He didn't say anything. He felt that the other party's actions were a bit childish. It made him angry, but at the same time, he found it funny. His indifferent gaze swept over Chiu Minglei's group. Chu-Mu didn't say anything. He raised his sword, carried his rations on his back, and hung his water bottle on his waist. He walked forward, ignoring everything. The feeling of being ignored was obviously uncomfortable, especially for someone like Chiu Minglei, who was full of pride. It was even more uncomfortable. Staring unwaveringly at Chu-Mu's back, Chiu Minglei gripped the sword in his hand and took a deep breath, resisting the urge to attack with his sword. Senior apprentice Brother Chiu, should we? One of the four made a throat-slitting gesture as he spoke. The other three also had ominous glints in their eyes. Chu Mu immediately felt traces of killing intent coming from behind him. He became vigilant. No need. Let's follow him. We'll kill all the foe beasts he wants to kill first. Xiao Minglei sneered. Let's see if he can't get any foe energy. Let's see if he has the qualifications to be arrogant in front of me. If he dares to attack us, we'll torture him to death. He's merely first place. He only comprehended sword intent earlier than me. As he spoke, Xiao Minglei absorbed a strand of foe energy to strengthen his physique. The five of them quickly followed Chu Mu. Compared to yesterday, Chu Mu's strength had clearly improved. His physique had become even stronger. His strength had reached over 7,000 jin. Even if he faced 2 or 3 scarlet-eyed wolves at the same time, he could still easily kill them. Not long after entering the wilderness, they encountered another scarlet-eyed wolf. Before Chu Mu could draw his sword, Xiao Minglei and the other four immediately rushed up from all angles. 2 of them blocked in front of Chu Mu while the other 3 surrounded him. They easily killed the scarlet-eyed wolf. Xiao Minglei and the other 4 had each absorbed at least 3 strands of grade 1 foe energy. Xiao Minglei himself had absorbed 6 strands of grade 1 foe energy. With his own combat skills, experience, and the use of swordsmanship, killing a scarlet-eyed wolf was extremely easy. After killing the scarlet-eyed wolf and obtaining a strand of foe energy, Xiao Minglei looked at Chu Mu again. He absorbed the strand of foe energy in front of Chu Mu. His eyes and actions were full of provocation. He then said in a mocking tone, "The speed of the first place on the Galaxy Genius list is just so. Forget about the first time." Chu Mu did not want to waste time on unnecessary fight. Time was of the essence. 1 day of the 10-day deadline had already passed. The first day of the 1-month deadline was also in progress. During this period, he had to return 20 strands of grade 1 foe energy to the bookstore owner. Then, he had to return 400 strands of grade 1 foe energy to him. In addition to the strands of foe energy that he had to return to the bookstore owner, Chu Mu also needed foe energy to cultivate and improve his strength. He needed foe energy to buy food. He even needed foe energy to buy better swords. Foe energy. Everything required foe energy. Foe energy was very precious. Therefore, Chu Mu did not want to waste time on meaningless fights. However, there were some things that only needed to be done once. If he could still endure it the second time, he would not be Chu Mu. "Since you guys want to play, I'll play with you." Chu Mu's lips curled into a cold smile. A cold glint flashed like lightning as he said to himself. Continuing to move forward, Xiao Minglei and the other 4 also moved forward with cold smiles on their faces. Not long after, the 3rd crimson-eyed wolf came from the side. Xiao Minglei and the other 4 used the same trick. 2 of them stood in front of Chu Mu, blocking his line of sight and path. The other 3 pulled out their swords and attacked the crimson-eyed wolf from 3 different angles. Chu Mu's feet suddenly exerted force and exploded. With a bang, the soil splashed. The 2 people in front of Chu Mu only felt a strong gust of wind coming from behind. It was terrifying. Immediately, it passed through them. One of their arms was brushed by, and they immediately felt like they were being hit by an elephant. It was as if their bones were broken, and they flew back to both sides. An extremely sharp sword light with a terrifying killing intent swept across the sky like a lightning bolt. In the blink of an eye, it cut through the 3-sword light and pierced into the center of the crimson-eyed wolf's forehead. The crimson-eyed wolf's fur was tough, and its skull was extremely hard. With the sharpness and hardness of the black iron sword, there was no way it could pierce through. However, after infusing the sword intent, the black iron sword became extremely sharp. With the support of the vibrating power, the tip of the sword vibrated violently and tore apart the wolf's fur and skull. The powerful sword light blew the corpse of the crimson-eyed wolf out of the attacking range of Xiao Minglei and the other 2. Chu Mu's figure flew along with the sword light and landed beside the corpse of the crimson-eyed wolf. He reached out his hand and caught a wisp of qi floating from the corpse. He turned around to look at Qiu Minglei and the others with a smile on his face. He sighed softly and said, "Your speed is too slow." Qiu Minglei and the other two's faces suddenly changed. Sharp killing intent shot out from their eyes. "Senior brother Qiu," one of them said. "Kill." Qiu Minglei was furious. His killing intent was overflowing. The sword in his hand turned into an extremely sharp light, like a thunderbolt, and slashed out. The other two also drew their swords. Like a poisonous snake coming out of its hole, like a storm, they attacked from two different angles. Cooperating with Qiu Minglei, they actually gave Chu Mu a feeling that there was nowhere to hide. No wonder the crimson-eyed wolf was killed so easily. The three of them had also mastered the sword intent again. Their attacking power was extremely terrifying. The speed of their swords was astonishing. If Chu Mu was hit, he would definitely die. But they were strong, but Chu Mu was stronger. If there was no way to dodge, then there was no need to dodge. Raising his sword, the dense buzzing sound made people's scalps tingle. It was like a swarm of bees flying. With the support of the sword intent, the black iron sword became extremely sharp. A sword slashed out. The sword light was swift and fierce, sweeping across the area. Instantly, it collided with the three incoming sword lights, causing sparks to fly. Chu Mu borrowed the force, and with a twist and turn of his wrist, he exerted force with a shake. Due to the collision, the sword that was slightly bent instantly straightened. Its speed increased as it slashed towards the person on the left. Shocked, but unable to dodge because Chu Mu's sword speed was too fast. It was beyond his imagination. The sword sliced through Qiu Minglei's neck, causing blood to spurt out. The sword light didn't stop there. It followed the momentum and drew an arc, following the flaw in Qiu Minglei's next attack. The sword light flashed in front of him. Qiu Minglei's eyes widened, filled with disbelief. His throat had been pierced by the sharp sword light. Stepping forward, he raised his wrist, and the tip of his sword broke the incoming sword. Then, he turned his hand and slashed. In the midst of the blood, the third person's body was cut open from the left side of his neck to the right side of his ribs. This scene fell on the other two people who had just crawled up from the ground and were about to attack Chu Mu with their swords drawn. They were horrified. For a moment they were stunned. However, Chu Mu wouldn't be stunned, nor would he be lenient. Since he had attacked, he would kill them all. Chapter 12-13. Don't kill me, I'm a secret disciple of the Dark Knight Sword sect. The last person held his sword and kept retreating while panicking. In the face of death, people would reveal their weakness. At this moment, this person forgot that being killed here wasn't a real death. Chu Mu didn't show any mercy. His sword instantly cut through the person's throat. Killing these 5 Dark Knight Sword sect disciples didn't injure Chu Mu, because the difference in strength between them was very clear. They were all geniuses, super geniuses. But compared to Chu Mu, there was still a big gap. Chu Mu belonged to the top of the small group of geniuses. He was a monster. Unfortunately, killing them didn't give them any benefits. After absorbing the void aura in his hand, Chu Mu was able to make a choice because he had cultivated the body refining technique and the qi cultivating technique. He could decide whether to use this void aura to strengthen his body or convert it into inner qi. Chu Mu directly used the void qi to strengthen his body. Because he cultivated the body transformation technique, the absorption speed was very fast. It was completed in a few breaths. He also knew that the void qi would be more effective when combined with the body transformation technique. But in such an environment, he couldn't cultivate properly. He could only absorb it directly. As for qi refinement, he planned to raise his body transformation technique to a certain level first. His body was strengthened again, and his strength reached 8,000 jin. In the Dark Knight tribe, under the huge resurrection stele, figures appeared one after another. Chu Mu, I will definitely take revenge. Chiu Minglei's face was full of hatred. He was unwilling, absolutely unwilling. He had to take revenge. Senior brother Chiu, Chu Mu is very strong. It won't be easy for us to take revenge. One of the 5 people who were killed and revived by Chu Mu said. I know, but he must die, no matter what method. Chiu Minglei said, full of hatred and killing intent. Senior brother Chiu, I heard that senior brother Zhu Tiantong and senior brother Chen Gang have established the Night Nether Hall. Many of our fellow disciples have joined them. Why don't we join them as well and join forces with the other fellow disciples to kill that Chu Mu? Senior brother Chiu, I have another plan. Chu Mu is a secret disciple of the 5 Elements Sword Sect. Let's make a move on the other disciples of the 5 Elements Sword Sect. Chu Mu didn't know that a plot that wasn't really a plot was unfolding around him. The deeper one went into the wilderness, the higher the chances of encountering a crimson-eyed wolf. 3 crimson-eyed wolves appeared in front of Chu Mu, flanking him from 3 different directions. They seemed to be cooperating with each other based on their instincts. Chu Mu, who had the strength of 4,000 jin, was even more powerful. Facing the 3 ferocious red-eyed wolves, his expression did not change. He raised his sword and charged forward. The stronger one's physique was, the faster one's thought process would be, and the more sensitive one's reaction would be. Furthermore, because of the sword intent, the thought process exceeded the limits of the body. With the support of the sword intent, the vibrating force was activated, and the sword light pierced through the air. The sword was like a thunderbolt, extremely fierce. With a strong wind-breaking sound, it had already pierced through the forehead of a crimson-eyed wolf, piercing into its brain and killing it instantly. Pulling out the sword, Chu Mu twisted his wrist and sliced towards another crimson-eyed wolf. Suddenly, a strange movement appeared in Chu Mu's mind. He ignored it, and his body followed the sword, killing another crimson-eyed wolf. His legs exerted force on the ground, and his strength instantly exploded. Like a spring that had been compressed to its limit, his body shot out like an arrow, and charged towards the 3rd crimson-eyed wolf that was pouncing towards him. The wolf's claws were sharp, and its fangs were cold. A fishy smell assaulted Chu Mu's face. Chu Mu's eyes slightly narrowed, and a sword-like light shot out from his pupils. The black iron sword in his hand pierced out like a rainbow piercing through the sun. The sharp wind whistled, and the incomparably sharp sword light pierced through the crimson-eyed wolf's open mouth and came out from the back of its neck. After killing 3 crimson-eyed wolves, Chu Mu obtained 3 strands of void energy. Chu Mu quickly absorbed 2 strands of void energy. Suddenly, a warm current surged in his body, and his body was rapidly strengthened. All aspects of his body were constantly improving. Soon, his strength reached 9,000 pounds, and it continued to increase, becoming stronger and stronger. 9,999 jin. At this point, the warm current had been exhausted, and he could not increase it any further. Fortunately, there was a record in the book that was worth 20 strands of first-grade void energy. This allowed Chu Mu to know that this was a very normal situation. It was a bottleneck, and there were 2 ways to break through this bottleneck. First, practice a cultivation method. Second, absorb 10 strands of first-grade void energy at once, and directly use a huge amount of strength to forcefully break through the bottleneck. Outside, it was very easy to encounter the attacks of void beasts. Without an environment to practice a cultivation method, Chu Mu did not have 10 strands of first-grade void energy. He only had 1 strand, so currently, he was unable to break through the bottleneck and truly reach the first firmament of body tempering. And the strange movement in his mind just now was related to the Galaxy Genius list. In the Dark Knight Sword sect, many people stared at the cyan list in the sky and said loudly, "I said that the first place in the Dark Knight Galaxy must be a disciple of our Dark Knight Sword sect. If it's not senior brother Zhu Tiantong, then it's senior brother Chen Gang." Senior brother Zhu Tiantong is first, Senior Brother Chungang is second. Hey, that 5 Elements Sword Sect disciple Chumu is constantly falling. It seems that he might fall out of the top 10. Facts have proven that his first place was only temporary. He was just lucky. That's right, that's right. How can a disciple of the 5 Elements Sword Sect be compared to a disciple of our Dark Knight Sword Sect? What's going on? Why is Senior Brother Chu's name falling? Oh no, Senior Brother Chu's ranking has fallen to 11th. The top 10 genius points have increased from 1,000 to 2,000. What's going on? Now, there are no disciples of any sword sect in the top 10. I knew it would be like this. Chumu is simply unreliable. Someone said sarcastically. He's unreliable at the critical moment. White Sky, I originally thought that your 5 Elements sword sect had an extraordinary disciple this time. I didn't expect that it was just a shooting star. Look at my Dark Knight sword sects Zhu Tiantong and Chungang. Those are the true geniuses. A voice sounded out in the sky and directly called out Vice Sect Master Whitesky's name. It was precisely the Vice Sect Master of the Dark Knight sword sect, Xiang Yi. His tone seemed to be regretful and complacent. No one knows the result until the end, White Sky replied indifferently. He was very calm because he knew Chu Mu's true identity. He was a god's son. There was no need to doubt the talent of a god's son. Therefore, he believed that Chu Mu's falling ranking was only temporary. He also believed that Chu Mu would catch up again and surpass them one by one before taking back the first place. Then I'll wait and see. Xiang Ye's loud laughter spread out and echoed out without end. I actually fell out of the top 10. Chu Mu was a little surprised. He was surprised that the talent points of the top 10 had all increased from the original 1,000 to 2,000. Chu Mu guessed that those people's cultivation had risen to the first heavenly layer. He guessed correctly. Zhu Tiantong, Chungang, and the others had indeed reached the first heavenly layer because they were hunting as a group. Most of the void chi obtained after hunting would belong to Zhu Tiantong, Chungang, and the others. On the other hand, Chu Mu was acting alone. In terms of efficiency, he couldn't compare to them. Not only did you lose the first place, but you also fell out of the top 10. Soon I'll surpass you. Xiao Minglei sneered. Senior Brother Chu's ranking actually fell out of the top 10. I knew that he was unreliable. He couldn't even keep his ranking and even caused us to be killed. A few esoteric disciples of the 5 Elements sword sect said. Alright, I think the real reason why you were killed is because someone wants to deal with Junior Brother Chu. Their purpose is to make us fight against Junior Brother Chu and cause internal strife. Lin Yi's eyes flashed with wisdom. He was a genius. He was less than 100 years old, but his cultivation had reached the peak of the second sky of Nirvana realm. He was the one with the highest cultivation among the geniuses of the 5 Elements sword sect who had entered the Azure Void world. He was now the leader of the 5 Elements sect and was very prestigious. Senior Brother Lin is right. So we should be united. Jiang Fan said. He was less than 100 years old. Before he had entered the Azure Void world, his cultivation was at the early stage of the second sky of Nirvana realm. He held a high position in the 5 Elements sect. Lin Yi and Jiang Fan said so. Those who were dissatisfied with Chu Mu did not say anything, but their eyes flashed with disapproval. Although they were all disciples of the 5 Elements sword sect, it was inevitable that there would be some disagreements. These people were the ones who had tried to recruit Chu Mu but were rejected. They were not happy with Chu Mu. Don't put your hope on others. Relying on yourself is the most realistic. If you don't want to be killed and lose face, then do your best to improve your strength. Lin Haichao said indifferently. His expression was indifferent. In terms of talent, he was second only to Lin Yi. His cultivation was at the late stage of the second sky of Nirvana realm. Kill more void beasts. His ranking fell out of the top 10 and fell to the 11th place. Chu Mu was not depressed because he did not feel excited when he was ranked first. He looked at everything calmly. Because he knew that no one could keep the momentum forever. It was normal to have ups and downs. He accepted it calmly and worked hard to improve. Chu Mu also absorbed the void qi in his hand. However, he had reached a bottleneck in body refining and could not be strengthened. Therefore, he ran the primary training qi formula to absorb the void qi. After a while, the void qi disappeared. Chu Mu felt that there was a stream of internal qi flowing slowly in the tendons and meridians in his body. He could drive this stream of internal qi to enhance his strength and speed. Refining a stream of void qi was equivalent to having a body refining strength of 2,000 kilograms. Moreover, it could be combined with body refining. Although it required more resources and time to practice both qi and body refining, the effect was very good. For example, Chu Mu's strength could break through 10,000 kilograms under the enhancement of that stream of internal qi. Chu Mu decided that he would use the void qi he got from hunting to improve his cultivation. When his cultivation reached the bottleneck, he would accumulate enough void qi and go back to the Night Dark tribe to break through in his own hut. Chapter 12:14. The deeper he went into the wilderness, the more people there were. The more void beasts there were. Unknowingly, Chu Mu arrived in front of a valley. Beside the valley, there was a crooked stone tablet. The stone tablet was entwined with vines and looked very old. Using the iron sword to push the vines away, 2 words were written on the stone tablet: Wolf Valley. Wolf Valley. Chu Mu muttered as he walked towards the narrow entrance of the valley. As soon as he entered the valley, he saw a group of crimson-eyed wolves. The aura of a living person immediately attracted the group of crimson-eyed wolves. They all turned their heads and looked over. Their red eyes were filled with bloodlust. Deep roars came from the depths of their throats like muffled thunder. This place was filled with a ferocious aura. Chu Mu noticed that the size of these crimson-eyed wolves seemed to be larger than the ones outside the valley. They seemed to be more vigorous. Soon, Chu Mu knew that it was not seemed, but definitely. Up until now, he had killed many crimson-eyed wolves with his sword. He was quite familiar with them. The group of crimson-eyed wolves howled as they ran towards him. Their movements were agile and their speed was extremely fast. They were obviously faster than the ones outside the valley. The Wolf Valley was more suitable for the crimson-eyed wolves to live in. Whether it was strength, speed, or explosiveness, they were at least 10% faster than the ones outside the valley. Good timing. Chu Mu glanced over and saw the 8 crimson-eyed wolves running paths, trajectories, and speeds. His brain was working quickly, and his mind was working at full speed, trying to find the weak points of the 8 crimson-eyed wolves. Chu Mu stomped his feet on the ground, and dust flew up. He dashed forward like an arrow. The black iron sword in his hand shook, and the sword vibrated at a high frequency. The speed of the sword increased, and the sword light swept across the sky like a thunderbolt. It was like a falling meteor. Its aura was sharp, and it cut through the air. Kill. Feeling a little obscure, the sword edge cut open the neck of a red-eyed wolf, causing blood to spurt out. Chu Mu hurriedly dodged and at the same time waved his sword to block. An enormous force slapped onto the sword. Fortunately, the black iron sword's body was tough enough, or else it would have been shattered. Chu Mu borrowed the force to quickly retreat, narrowly dodging 2 wolf claws and a bite. He waved his sword again and fiercely whipped it. The sword trembled and like a long whip, it whipped onto a scarlet-eyed wolf's head. The enormous force directly sent the scarlet-eyed wolf flying. A wolf claw suddenly attacked from the side. Chu Mu hurriedly turned his wrist and pressed the tip of his sword against the soft flesh in the center of the wolf claw. He exerted force, shook it away, and then chopped down with his sword. The tip of the sword, the edge of the sword, the blade of the sword, the body of the sword, and the head of the sword were all used by Chu Mu perfectly. Chu Mu, who had a portion of his memories unsealed, felt that his understanding of the sword had deepened. This allowed him to be even more agile and sharp in battle. Chu-mu liked this feeling very much. He rushed into the 6 red-eyed wolves and was surrounded. He used the sword in his hand to resist, dodge, block, counterattack, and kill as if he was a crazy demon. The pressure brought by the 5 stronger red-eyed wolves was very great. Chu-mu had to concentrate and use his swordsmanship to 100%. He had to fully release his understanding of the sword and explore every inch of the power of the sword in his hand. After dozens of breaths, the 6 red-eyed wolves were all killed by Chu-mu. However, Chu-mu was also injured. His back and left arm were scratched with wounds. Blood flowed out, and the wounds were so deep that the bones could be seen. Moreover, waves of intense pain stained the surrounding rough linen clothes red. After obtaining 8 strands of first-grade void chi, he retreated to the entrance of the valley and quickly absorbed them. 2 strands of void chi healed Chu-mu's 2 wounds. The remaining 6 strands were absorbed and transformed into inner chi, making the inner chi reach the level of 4,000 pounds of strength. The improvement of his inner chi allowed Chu-mu's thinking speed to be further enhanced. His 6 senses were also enhanced. His strength became stronger. He stepped forward and walked into the Wolf Valley. The Wolf Valley wasn't small. There were short trees, scattered rocks, and a clear stream. Arriving at the side of the clear stream, Chu-mu took out some rations and a water bottle. He started to eat and drink. After finishing the water in the bottle, he filled another bottle in the stream. At this time, another person broke through to the first sky and obtained 1,000 genius points, surpassing Chu-mu. Chu-mu's ranking dropped again to the 15th place. The drop in ranking caused another round of debate. After a short rest, he continued to move forward, looking for red-eyed wolves to kill. Not long after, when he passed by a huge rock, he suddenly felt a strong sense of danger. His hair stood on end, and an extremely sharp wind appeared in the sky. Without any hesitation, he swung his sword upwards. This sword was assisted by his inner chi, causing his physical strength to explode even more. The sword light was earth-shattering, and his footsteps rapidly retreated. The enormous collision caused sparks to fly. Chu-mu felt a slight pain in the web between his thumb and forefinger. His entire body was pushed back uncontrollably. He quickly adjusted himself, and just as he was about to stand firm, he felt an intense sense of danger. A terrifying gale wreaked havoc, and a cold light flashed in front of his eyes at an incomparably fast speed. Chu-mu felt as if he was being torn apart and felt pain for no reason. Although he was shocked, he did not panic. He quickly moved his feet and quickly dodged to the side. The black iron sword shook, and the sword body instantly straightened. With the support of sword intent, the vibrating force was activated, and it went to meet the cold light. The speed of the cold light was extremely fast, and Chu-mu's sword speed was not fast either. They collided again, and sparks flew. The sharp sound made his eardrums hurt. The huge force almost made the sword in his hand fly out. He clenched his hand tightly, and felt some pain between his thumb and forefinger. With Chu-mu's current body strength, the vibrating force was enough to make him feel pain between his thumb and forefinger. It was enough to show how strong the impact was. Dodging, retreating, and counterattacking was extremely dangerous. When his back was against a huge rock, Chu-mu finally saw the source of the danger. It was a red-eyed wolf, an unusual one. This red-eyed wolf was taller and stronger than the ones he had killed before. The color of its fur was darker, and the outline of its muscles could be vaguely seen. It was full of explosive power. Its fangs and claws were shockingly sharp. When it clawed at him, Chu-mu quickly lowered his body and slid forward. The black iron sword took the opportunity to cut through the waist of the red-eyed wolf. It felt very obscure. Under the sharp claws of the red-eyed wolf, the rock was as fragile as tofu, and it was torn open with 3 deep scratches. Elite red-eyed wolf. Chu-mu appeared behind the red-eyed wolf, his eyes burning. Compared to the average red-eyed wolf, it was bigger and stronger, stronger, faster, more agile, with sharper claws. Moreover, its fur was tougher. Chu Mu discovered that after activating his inner chi to increase his strength and adding sword will to his sword, it only left a light scratch on the side of the elite red-eyed wolf's body. Blood seeped out. The elite red-eyed wolf quickly turned around and faced Chu Mu. Its red eyes were ferocious. Its body crouched slightly, and it suddenly jumped up. It stretched out a claw and grabbed at Chu Mu's neck. The terrifying wind was incomparably sharp, and the claw left a few afterimages in the air. The sword light flashed and chopped at the edge of the claw. Then, using the momentum, he chopped at the elite red-eyed wolf's head. Just as it was about to hit, he twisted his wrist, and the blade turned into a blade. He slapped the elite red-eyed wolf's head fiercely. The vibrational force exploded, and under the recoil, Chu Mu flew back. The elite red-eyed wolf was also forced back. After landing on the ground, it crouched slightly before bouncing up again and pouncing at Chu Mu. The elite red-eyed wolf's strength, speed, explosive force, and reaction speed, as well as the toughness of its fur, were all much better than the average red-eyed wolf. In terms of fighting skills, it was even more obvious. A strong opponent, a terrifyingly strong opponent. If he didn't have inner chi, Chu Mu wouldn't be the elite red-eyed wolf's opponent at all. After all, even if he had superb swordsmanship, he wouldn't be able to use it without the support of his body. Right now, his greatest weakness was his sword. Even with the support of sword intent and the power of vibration, he was still unable to cut through the elite crimson-eyed wolf's fur. He could only cause minor damage. If he had a better sword, a sharper sword, he would be able to deal more damage to the elite crimson-eyed wolf, or even kill it in one hit. Facing a strong opponent, Chu Mu didn't retreat. Instead, he felt excited. The feeling of his blood boiling made his body full of energy. With a shake of his hand, Chu Mu took the initiative to attack amidst the ringing of his sword. The elite red-eyed wolf's strength was stronger and faster. Its reaction speed and explosive force were stronger, and its fighting ability was more exquisite. However, there was still a limit. Chu Mu quickly adapted to the elite red-eyed wolf's fighting style. He looked for its weakness and counterattacked fiercely. Every strike of his sword would hit the elite red-eyed wolf, leaving a slight wound, and constantly deepening the wound. The injured elite red-eyed wolf became even more terrifying. With a howl, a few more red-eyed wolves came running from afar. They joined the battle and surrounded Chu Mu. Not only did Chu Mu have no intention of retreating, but he also charged towards the red-eyed wolves and killed them with his sword. Now, as long as there weren't 6 or 7 red-eyed wolves attacking together, they wouldn't be able to withstand a single strike from Chu Mu. After killing them, void chi appeared. Chu Mu dodged the attacks of the elite red-eyed wolves. At the same time, he grabbed the void chi and absorbed it. As he dodged, he recovered his strength and refined it into inner chi. Not long after, Chu Mu also reached a bottleneck in the aspect of training chi, just like body training. With the support of inner chi, although his strength didn't increase as much as 1 + 1 = 2, it still allowed Chu Mu's current strength to reach 15,000 kilograms. In terms of strength, the gap between him and the elite red-eyed wolf was further reduced. The stronger his strength, the stronger his attacks, and the more damage he could cause to the elite red-eyed wolves. The more Zhang Xian fought, the more familiar he became with it. He was able to deal more damage with less strength. The surrounding rocks were basically shattered by the attacks of the elite red-eyed wolf. It looked like a ruin. The elite red-eyed wolf's physical strength was extremely shocking. Despite its continuous attacks, it unexpectedly didn't show any signs of exhaustion. However, Chu Mu knew that the heavily wounded elite red-eyed wolf was at the very end of the fight. As long as he could hold on for a while longer, the battle situation would be reversed. At that time, the elite red-eyed wolf would be his meal. Presumably, its aura would be even better. Chapter 12:15. The sword light was like a shooting star, piercing through the sky and piercing through the elite scarlet-eyed wolf's wound. It was more than 3 inches deep. The sword intent burst out, and the vibrating power burst out, widening the wound and causing blood to spurt out. Xiao Chen withdrew his sword and stabbed out again like a snake coming out of its hole. This time, it pierced through the same wound, 6 inches deep. With a sorrowful cry, the elite scarlet-eyed wolf struggled and died. Streams of void qi came out from the elite scarlet-eyed wolf's corpse. Among them, there was even a weak ball of light. There were a total of 5 rank 1 void qi and a small ball of light that was the size of a pigeon's egg. Chu Mu stretched out his hand and grabbed the 5 rank 1 void qi. He absorbed one of them and turned it into a warm current that circulated in his body, quickly recovering his exhausted energy. As for the other 4, Chu Mu wrapped them around the fingers of his left hand. Then, he grabbed the faint silver ball of light and touched it between his eyebrows. Immediately, the faint silver ball of light merged with Chu Mu's eyebrows. Pieces of information appeared, and a figure appeared in his mind, dancing with a sword. After a while, Chu Mu received this piece of information. The figure of the sword dancing in his mind disappeared as well. However, everything was clearly recorded in his mind. So, it is an elementary sword technique. This saves me the trouble of having to spend more than 100 rank 1 void qi, Chu Mu thought to himself. He did not expect his luck to be so good. After killing an elite scarlet-eyed wolf, not only did he obtain 5 rank 1 void qi, but he also obtained an elementary sword technique. The bookstore owner had cultivation techniques, sword techniques, movement techniques, and movement technique. There were only 3 levels: elementary, intermediate, and advanced. Furthermore, the prices were very uniform. The elementary was 100 rank 1 void qi, the intermediate was 1000 rank 2 void qi, and the advanced was 10,000 rank 3 void qi. Xiao Chen stayed where he was and carefully comprehended it. Then, he swung his sword and practiced the elementary sword technique like the figure that appeared in his mind. The elementary sword technique was the sublimation of the basic sword technique. It could also be said that it was a strengthened basic sword technique. It was more comprehensive than the basic sword technique. It further developed the power of the sword. Compared to Chu Mu's attainments in swordsmanship, this elementary swordsmanship was nothing. However, it could strengthen and improve the application of some basic swordsmanship, making his sword sharper. The sword light overflowed in all directions, and it was extremely sharp. After he finished practicing the elementary sword technique, every strike was extremely precise, as if he had practiced it 1,000 times. After practicing the sword technique, Chu Mu's physical strength had fully recovered. However, he had consumed a large portion of his inner qi, and there was not much left. Chu Mu did not intend to use the 4 streams of void qi on his fingers to recover his inner qi. The current him still possessed decent strength. As long as it was not an elite red-eyed wolf or a void beast stronger than an elite red-eyed wolf, he would be able to deal with it easily. Void energy, he needed more void energy. The Wolf Valley was the habitat of the red-eyed wolves. There were many red-eyed wolves living there, and they were a group. Not long after, Chu Mu encountered a few more red-eyed wolves. He took out his sword and killed them, obtaining a few more strands of rank 1 void qi. Although there were many red-eyed wolves in the Wolf Valley, there were very few elite red-eyed wolves. After Chu Mu killed more than 10 red-eyed wolves, he did not encounter a second elite red-eyed wolf, which made him feel a little disappointed. Looking at the sky, the sun was gradually setting in the west, and the afterglow illuminated half of the sky. The sky was red and the clouds were burning like flames. "I have to go back," Chu Mu said to himself. The Wolf Valley was quite a distance away from the Dark Knight tribe. He had to leave the Wolf Valley now, and then rush back to the Dark Knight tribe before nightfall. Although he didn't know how dangerous it was to be 10 times more dangerous in the wilderness at night, Chu Mu wasn't an arrogant and conceited person. This was because his current strength was still at the lowest level. Turning around, he dashed towards the exit of Wolf Valley. On the way, he didn't encounter any more red-eyed wolves and was unimpeded. At this time, there were a total of 23 strands of rank 1 void chi on his left hand. If he wanted to, he could use these 23 strands of rank 1 void chi to break through to the first sky, whether it was the first sky of body transformation or chi cultivation. But after thinking for a while, Chu Mu decisively gave up on this idea. At this time, he had already reached the peak of body transformation and chi cultivation, and had reached a bottleneck. But as long as he spent some time and cultivated properly, he would definitely be able to break through in both. After rushing out of the Wolf Valley, he did not stop, nor did he reduce his speed. At this time, many geniuses were also rushing towards the Dark Knight tribe. The sun had completely set, and most of the geniuses had returned to the Dark Knight tribe. Chu Mu was also close, but now, he encountered a red-eyed wolf. It was an ordinary red-eyed wolf, but its body was a little bloated, and its scarlet eyes were like burning red flames. Its strength was stronger and faster, and its strength had at least doubled. Dodging, killing. Chu Mu obtained another strand of rank 1 void chi. So it turns out that void beasts will go berserk after nightfall. Their strength will increase, their speed will increase, and their fur will become tougher. Chu Mu thought to himself as he flew towards the Dark Knight tribe. A berserk red-eyed wolf was nothing to him, but if there were 4 or 5 of them surrounding him, Chu Mu would not be able to deal with them easily. If there were a few more, he would have to run for his life. Finally, he crossed the wooden bridge and entered the Dark Knight tribe. At this time, the Dark Knight tribe was brightly lit. Chu Mu strode towards the small restaurant. After eating his fill, he bought some dry food and headed towards the bookstore. Shopkeeper, 20 strands of rank 1 void chi. Entering the bookstore, Chu Mu took out 20 strands of rank 1 void chi and handed them to the shopkeeper. Little friend, you really surprised me. The shopkeeper was startled, but he soon smiled and said, however, I see that you have reached a bottleneck in your chi and void chi cultivation. You only need to absorb these 20 strands of rank 1 void chi, and you will be able to break through to the first sky. At that time, your strength will be stronger and you will be able to obtain more void chi. It won't be too late to return them to me then. No need. Chu Mu said indifferently. When he owed someone a debt, it was hard for him not to think about it. He only wanted to return the debt as soon as possible and get rid of this thought. Alright, seeing that you are the first to return 20 strands of rank 1 void chi, I will give you a small gift. After the shopkeeper kept the 20 strands of rank 1 void chi, he took out a gray book and handed it to Chu Mu. Void Beast Illustration Handbook. Chu Mu glanced at it and kept it well. This illustration handbook records rank 1 to rank 3 void beasts. If you want a higher rank void beast illustration handbook, I have it here. The intermediate void beast illustration handbook only requires 10,000 strands of rank 3 void chi. The advanced void beast illustration handbook only requires 10,000 strands of rank 6 void chi, the shopkeeper said with a smile. Let's talk about it later, Chu Mu said. He took the low-rank Void Beast illustration handbook and left the bookstore, quickly returning to his wooden house. Before entering the wooden house, Chu Mu's path was blocked. There were more than 10 people in the group, and one of them was Chiu Minglei. Chu Mu knew that they were here to cause trouble. I am Yang Xian. The leader of the dozen or so people indifferently stared at Chu Mu and absent-mindedly said, Chu Mu, you killed 5 of our Night Underworld Hall's junior brothers. Take out 50 strands of first-rank Void Aura in 10 days and this grudge will be settled. His casual words revealed an unquestionable dominance. Before this, his cultivation had reached the 3rd sky of Nirvana realm. He was stronger than Lin Yi, and he was even more talented. Now, he was ranked 3rd on the Galaxy Genius list of the Dark Knight tribe. He had reached the 1st sky of both chi cultivation and body tempering, so he had the right to be proud. Otherwise, Chu Mu asked. Ha! Yang Xian smiled when he heard Chu Mu's words. There is no need for otherwise. Although you can revive after dying in the Azure Sky Void world, unless you hide in the Dark Knight tribe and never leave, that's right. Otherwise, as long as you leave the Dark Knight tribe, we will kill you every time we see you, someone beside Chen Gang threatened. Then I will wait. Chu Mu smiled faintly, not showing the slightest fear. Very well. I hope you will still be able to smile after this. Yang Xian's eyes flashed with anger, but then he smiled. Qiu Minglei took 2 steps forward and stood in front of Chu Mu. His eyes were fierce and filled with murderous intent as he said, Chu Mu, I will wait for you on the wooden bridge of the Dark Knight tribe tomorrow. I will kill you with my own hand. Chu Mu looked at Qiu Minglei and found that he had also reached the first sky. Yang Xian, Chu Mu is a member of our 5 Elements Sword sect. If you want to deal with him, you'll be making an enemy out of our 5 Elements sect. Lin Yi, Jiang Fan and the other 5 Elements sect members walked over. Lin Yi spoke in a tough tone. The 5 Elements sect is nothing. Yang Xian smiled coldly. You don't even have one person in the top 10. What right do you have to be so arrogant? Indeed, on the current Galactic Genius list, Lin Yi was ranked the highest in the 5 Elements sect. He was only ranked 13th, while the esoteric disciples of the Dark Knight Sword sect occupied the top 4. This was enough to make them proud. It had to be said that the difference between an overlord force and a dominator force was very obvious. Lin Yi and the others' expressions changed when they heard Yang Xian's words. Some of them also looked at Chu Mu. Chu Mu was originally ranked first on the Galaxy Genius list, but his ranking kept falling until he fell out of the top 10. The second time he fell out of the top 15. Now, he had fallen out of the top 50. Many disciples of the 5 Elements Sword sect were disappointed. Vice Sect Master Bai Qiong had also been mocked by Xiang Yi several times, but he didn't refute. Senior Brother Lin, this has nothing to do with you. I can handle it, Chu Mu said to Lin Yi. This was indeed his problem. He didn't want to cause trouble for others. Remember, 50 strands of first-grade void qi in 10 days. Yang Xian glanced coldly at Chu Mu and left with the members of the Dark Knight Hall. When Qiu Minglei left, he made a throat-slitting gesture at Chu Mu with a sinister smile. Junior Brother Chu, you will act with us tomorrow, Lin Yi said as he walked forward. Senior Brother Lin, the most important thing for us now is to kill void beasts to improve our strength. It would be best if someone could rush into the top 10, someone said immediately. Being in the top 10 didn't have any substantial rewards, but it was a kind of glory. The Dominator forces and the 10 Overlord forces were competing with each other. Yes, Senior Brother Lin, we can't be implicated, another person said. Senior Brother Lin, thank you for your kindness, Chu Mu said to Lin Yi, ignoring those people and turning to leave. Humph, he's quite arrogant. What's the use of being arrogant? He's still being threatened. Chu Mu could hear the sarcasm in a low voice, but he ignored it. Lin Yi's expression changed. He glared at those people and didn't say anything. Chapter 12:16. Chu Mu, what are you doing? In the 5 Elements Sword sect, Deputy Sect Master Bai Qiong frowned as he looked at the Galaxy Genius list in the sky. Chu Mu's ranking dropped from the 1st place to the 11th place. Not long after, it dropped to the 16th place. Now, it had dropped all the way to the 51st place. At this moment, his name jumped again, dropping down to the 56th place. Senior Brother Chu's ranking dropped again. This is the 4th time. Why does it keep dropping? This is so disappointing. As the saying went, things should not happen more than 3 times. However, Chu Mu's ranking dropped for the 4th time. This inevitably disappointed those who had high hopes for him. What's going on? In the sky-shaking peak, Jiang Bei was also muttering to himself. The disciples of the sky-shaking peak were the same. In the beginning, they were envied by many people. But now, there were already a lot of rumors about them. It was nothing more than mocking them. That kind of feeling was indeed unpleasant. Chu Mu did not mind. The threats and disdain of others would not embarrass him. After returning to his wooden house, he checked the Galaxy Genius list of the Night Dark tribe and found that his ranking had dropped to the 56th place. Since he had entered the Sky Azure virtual world, a full day had passed. It was now the second night and there were already 55 people ahead of him. There were at least 2,000 genius points. 1,000 genius points could be obtained for comprehending sword intent. 1,000 genius points could be obtained for comprehending a type of heaven and earth power. 1,000 genius points could also be obtained for reaching the first sky realm. At this moment, Zhu Tiantong, who was at the top of the list, had obtained 4,000 genius points. Chen Gang, who was at the second place, also had 4,000 genius points. As for Yang Xian, who was at the third place, he had 3,000 genius points. It seemed that Zhu Tiantong and Chen Gang had both reached the first sky realm, comprehended sword intent, and comprehended a type of heaven and earth power. There was no doubt that Zhu Tiantong, Chen Gang, and the others were talented. In addition, there were members of the Night Nether Hall who had hunted void beasts and offered a portion of void chi to them. Unknowingly, the two of them had saved time from hunting void beasts, which could be used to comprehend the power of heaven and earth, and so on. Chu Mu was different. He was a lone traveler. He had to hunt and obtain all the fo chi. He also had to use a portion of it to recover from his injuries and recover his strength. He did not have much time to comprehend it properly. The 10th place also had 3,000 talent points, while the 11th place had 2,000. With a faint smile, Chu Mu started cultivating in the wooden hut. Primary body transformation technique. Starting from the first movement, after the first movement was completed, the second movement would be immediately carried on. There was no pause. The heat within the body continued to gather, becoming stronger and stronger. After the 6th movement was completed, he entered the 7th movement, then the 8th movement, and then the 9th movement. The 9th movement was the last movement. The heat within the body had already become very strong. Chu Mu could vaguely hear the sound of a surging tide reverberating within his body. The heat continued to wash over him, causing his body to strengthen bit by bit, becoming more and more tyrannical. After fixing the 9th movement for half an hour, Chu Mu's skin turned red, like a cooked prawn. Steam rose from his body, rising in spirals. He only felt as if his entire body was about to burn, and his consciousness gradually became dazed. There was an explosion. It was as if a terrifying flame had exploded within his body, impacting his entire body. His bones emitted explosive sounds, and a surge of power emerged from the depths of his body. In the blink of an eye, it enveloped his entire body. The almost burning high temperature quickly retreated, replaced by a burst of coldness. A powerful force surged within his body. His every move was accompanied by bursts of cracking sounds, and his fists whistled like the wind. Body transformation technique has reached the first heavenly layer. Obtained 1,000 talent points. A fleeting voice sounded in his mind. On the Galaxy Genius list, the talent points behind Chu Mu's name changed from 1,000 to 2,000. However, his ranking did not change. He was still ranked 56. This was just the beginning. After moving his arms and legs, he felt that the strength of 10,000 kilograms after the breakthrough was completely different from that of 9,999 kilograms. Although there was only a difference of 1 kilogram in terms of numbers, they were two different realms. Right now, he felt that he could unleash the full potential of his strength. If he were to encounter another elite crimson-eyed wolf, he would only need half the time to kill it. Of course, if it were other genius swordsmen, they might not be able to kill an elite red-eyed wolf with the strength of 10,000 kilograms. This was the gap between the talent and the use of strength. There were more than 30,000 geniuses in the entire Dark Knight tribe. In terms of the use of strength, if Chu Mu said he was the second, no one could claim to be the first. Sitting cross-legged on the wooden bed, he cleared his mind. After calming his mind and concentrating, he mobilized the internal qi in his body through the route of the primary qi training formula. The route of the primary qi training formula was relatively simple and easy to master. Chu Mu's internal qi had also reached the extreme. The internal qi kept running in his meridians over and over again. After each cycle, it seemed to be purified a little bit. It took about 100 breaths for each cycle. After the 36th cycle, the internal qi had been purified 36 times, which had reached the extreme that it could reach now. The internal qi expanded and contracted in an instant. Then, it expanded again and exploded. Chu Mu felt that his spirit and mind were also soaring. The internal qi in his meridians was reorganized. A new feeling arose spontaneously. Your qi training level has reached the first heaven. You have gained 1,000 talent points. The ethereal voice sounded again. After Chu Mu's name, the talent points changed to 3,000. Then, his name began to flash and surged up rapidly. Like a hot knife through butter, it surpassed the names one after another. When it surpassed the 16th place, it stopped, because the talent points after the names in front of him had also reached 3,000. Chu Mu was breaking through, and so were the others. The only difference was when and where they broke through. From the 56th place to the 16th place, an increase of 40 places was very shocking. Good boy, are you finally going to fight back? White Sky smiled when he saw the change in the Galaxy Genius list. The Peak Master's ranking has increased. He has suddenly risen to the 16th place. The disciples of the Zhentian Peak were very happy. Oh, he actually rose to the 16th place. He's only the 16th place. He didn't even enter the top 10. Xiao Minglei's expression abruptly changed. His face was gloomy. His talent points were only 2,000 points, and he was instantly surpassed by Chu Mu. This meant that in a short span of 4 to 6 hours, Chu Mu's training qi and body training had both reached the first layer of sky, surpassing him again. Was there no hope for revenge now? He actually broke through. But this is more fun, isn't it? Yang Xian sneered when he noticed this. If he killed someone before breaking through, he wouldn't suffer any losses other than dying once. However, if he killed someone after breaking through, his cultivation level would drop by the first heaven. That would be a great loss. After reaching the first heaven of qi training level, the amount of inner qi would only increase a little. However, the quality of inner qi would become much purer. Similarly, the power of inner qi would increase by several folds. Everyone was working hard. They were all geniuses, but there were also differences. Feeling the purer inner qi in his body, Chu Mu smiled. Cultivating both inner qi and inner qi, he had successfully broken through to the first heaven. His strength had increased, and he had also obtained 2,000 talent points. It was a good harvest. The black iron sword's sharpness isn't enough. I need a better sword, he thought to himself. However, he had no other choice now because a better sword would require a higher price. For example, the tungsten steel sword, which was one level higher than the black iron sword, would require 100 first-grade void qi to purchase. The tungsten steel sword could easily cut open the fur of a first-grade void beast and damage the fur of a second-grade void beast. If it was a better sword, such as the Vajra sword, it would require more void qi. Void qi, void qi. Everything required the use of void qi. For the time being, he could not afford a better sword. If he wanted to increase his lethality, he would have to start from other aspects. After thinking for a while, Chu Mu's eyes flashed. He sat cross-legged and held the black iron sword, carefully feeling it. He wanted to comprehend the power of heaven and earth. Based on the current situation, comprehending the power of gold was undoubtedly the best. This was because the power of gold's sharpness would increase the sharpness of the sword and increase its lethality. With his strong comprehension ability and his extraordinary attainments in the power of gold, it would not be too difficult for him to comprehend it again. Gradually, Chu Mu's perception became more and more profound. There was a hint of sharpness that was faintly discernible in his spiritual world. The originally dark spiritual world lit up because he had comprehended the sword intent. The sword intent lingered in the center of the spiritual world. Now, not far from the edge of the sword intent, a faint light was faintly discernible. The power of gold had a sharp sharpness that could cut through anything. All sorts of comprehensions appeared in his mind, becoming clearer and clearer. After an unknown amount of time, the light suddenly shone brightly. A faint golden color was born out of thin air beside the sword intent. It emitted a shocking sharpness. This sharpness was different from the sharpness of the sword intent. You have comprehended the power of gold. You have received 1,000 genius points. Amidst the fleeting voice, Chu Mu's genius points reached 4,000. On the Galaxy Genius ranking, the name that had stopped at the 16th place flickered once again and rushed into the top 10. It only stopped when it reached the 5th place. This was because the genius points of the 3rd and 4th place had increased from 3,000 to 4,000 not long ago. White Sky, this disciple of your sword sect named Chu Mu is not bad. His ranking actually rose so quickly. However, he is still inferior to my Knight Profound Sword Sect's disciple. Not to mention Chun Gang and Zhu Tiantong, even Yen Fei can trample him under her feet. Xiang Ye's voice sounded again. That voice carried a hint of ridicule. It was unknown how much the 5 Elements Sword Sect's disciples hated it. I've said it before. It's still early, White Sky replied indifferently. Chapter 12:17. What's going on? It's only been one night and he's already ranked 5th? The geniuses were all dumbfounded when they saw the rankings on the Galaxy Genius list. They rubbed their eyes and looked again. It was real and not an illusion. After one night, the 6th and 7th place geniuses also had 4,000 points. However, they were slower than Chu Mu, so they were ranked behind him. It had to be said that the geniuses' abilities were gradually showing. As time passed, they showed more and more of their abilities and improved by leaps and bounds. That night was a night of rapid improvement. His chi cultivation had both reached the first sky and he had also comprehended the gold force. His strength had increased by many times. If I encounter another elite red-eyed wolf now, it will be easier to kill it, Chu Mu thought to himself. The first rays of dawn appeared on the horizon and the night gradually faded. Chu Mu got out of bed and practiced a beginner-level sword technique. He washed up and put on the shabby coarse linen clothes. He had no choice as he didn't have any other clothes. Although the coarse linen clothes smelled a little strange, he still had to wear them. He took out the illustration book of low-level void beasts and flipped it open. There were words and colorful pictures on each page, and each page recorded a void beast. The first page showed the red-eyed wolf with a simple introduction. The colorful pictures were vivid and lifelike. The second page also showed the red-eyed wolf, but it was an elite red-eyed wolf called the red-eyed battle wolf. The third page also showed the red-eyed wolf, but it was more majestic and ferocious than the red-eyed battle wolf. It was called the red-eyed wolf king. The low-level void beasts recorded in this book were the low-level void beasts in the wilderness around the Night Dark tribe. They weren't the low-level void beasts of the entire Azure Sky void world. Therefore, there were only 10 types of Grade 1 void beasts, 8 types of Grade 2 void beasts, and 5 types of Grade 3 void beasts. Each type of void beast was divided into 3 levels: ordinary, elite, and king. The king level was the lowest and its location was also indicated. For example, the red-eyed wolf king was in the Wolf Valley. I wonder how powerful the red-eyed wolf king is? Chu Mu's eyes flashed as his blood sped up and his battle intent surged. The scarlet-eyed battle wolves were very strong. As the king of the scarlet-eyed wolves, the scarlet-eyed wolf king should be much stronger. On the last page of the illustrated handbook, there was a simple map. It marked out the locations of low-level foe beasts outside the Night Dark tribe, such as the Wolf Valley, Tiger Stream, Eagle Cliff, and other places. After practicing the elementary sword technique and reading the illustration handbook of elementary void beasts, the sun had risen. After eating some rations and drinking some water, Chu Mu tidied himself up a little and left. At this time, many people had already left Dark Night Tribe and entered the wilderness. Brother Chu, Yang Xian has brought a group of people to the wooden bridge to stop you. Lin Yi stepped forward and said to Chu Mu, "Senior Brother Chu, let's fight our way out together." Jiang Fan's tone was filled with killing intent. Lin Haichao didn't say anything. He just stood aside and looked at Chu Mu. In the end, the disciples of the Sword Sect were still united. "No, senior brothers and junior brothers, this is a grudge between me and Qiu Minglei's group. I will resolve it. Don't forget that our main purpose in coming here is not to fight with the disciples of the Dark Knight Sword Sect." Chu Mu said straightforwardly, "If you suffer losses because of me, I will feel very guilty. Don't say anything more. This is my decision." Chu Mu immediately added, not allowing Lin Yi and the others to speak. After saying that, Chu Mu turned around and strode out of Dark Night Tribe. He saw a group of people standing on the wooden bridge. Yang Xian was leisurely sitting on the edge of the bridge, looking at the clear water and the fish swimming in it. "Let's go." Lin Yi and the others quickly followed. As soon as Chu Mu walked out of the Dark Night Tribe, Qiu Minglei said coldly, "I thought you were hiding in the Dark Night Tribe and didn't dare to come out." His eyes were filled with killing intent. Including him, there were a total of 8 people from the Dark Night Tribe. Each of them had at least reached the first sky and had mastered sword intent. They were all top 60 on the Galaxy Genius roll. All of them were either grinning or staring at Chu Mu with murderous intent. Chu Mu didn't answer and didn't stop. He just walked over. Yang Xian didn't raise his head, as if the fish in the water were more attractive. Even though he didn't raise his head, his voice was still heard, 50 first-grade void chi in 10 days. "Do you agree?" "Give it to me," Chu Mu said lightly. "Senior Brother Yang, this man is stubborn. He should be killed." Qiu Minglei's voice was filled with killing intent. "Then let's kill him," Yang Xian said casually, as if he were going to decide Chu Mu's fate. Qiu Minglei unsheathed his sword and the other 6 people also did the same. They either jumped in the air like an eagle pouncing on a rabbit, lowered their bodies like a snake, or circled around from the side. "Junior Brother Chu, be careful," Lin Yi shouted. When he was about to unsheath his sword, Chu Mu moved. As the dust flew, his body shot out like an arrow leaving the bow. The black iron sword trembled and the sword light was sharp. With the support of the sword intent, his speed increased rapidly. The sword was like a meteor from outer space. With a puff, the sword pierced through the throat of one of the people. Blood spurted out, but Chu Mu had already flashed past and slashed at the second person. The 6 swords came from different directions and from different angles. Each sword was very fierce and full of killing intent. Chu Mu changed from slashing to slashing, drawing an arc in front of him. The vibration power burst out and the internal chi exploded. His strength increased greatly and he immediately broke the 6 swords. Then, he flicked his sword again. With a puff, the sharp sword cut through the neck of the second person and beheaded him. Even though he had reached the first heaven and his body was stronger, he still couldn't compare with a void beast, let alone block the sword. In just 3 short breaths, 2 people had died under Chu Mu's sword. Lin Yi paused, his face full of shock. Yang Xian also looked up and his face changed slightly. He quickly moved his feet to dodge and waved his sword to block. He was unscathed. After all, he had reached the first heaven of Qi cultivation, which was better than the first heaven of Qi cultivation alone. His use of power was also much better than the others. Facing the siege of 5 people, he was at ease. Under another fatal sword light, blood splattered. Chu Mu pierced the heart of the third person. Yang Xian paled at this sight. He slapped his palm against the edge of the wooden bridge and leaped up, unsheathing his sword. His sword gleamed with a fierce light as it streaked across the sky like a bolt of lightning. Yang Xian's sword was more threatening to Chu Mu than the previous 7 people combined. This sword was extremely fast. There was even lightning flickering on the sword. It was the power of lightning. With the power of lightning and sword intent, the sword was extremely fast. In an instant, it pierced towards Chu Mu like a bolt of lightning. Chu Mu's hair stood on end. He quickly retreated and slashed out with his sword. At the same time, the other 4 people cooperated with Yang Xian to block Chu Mu's escape route. The 2 swords collided. Under the huge force, Yang Xian trembled in the air and fell to the ground. Chu Mu also took 2 steps back. The 4 swords approached. He quickly moved his feet and twisted his body to dodge, but a sword still slashed his back. It was instantly torn apart and blood flowed out. Yang Xian, who was ranked 3rd, was indeed very powerful. After landing, Yang Xian stomped his feet and his strength exploded. With the support of his inner qi, the speed of his sword increased. It turned into a bolt of lightning and attacked again. The other 4 people also attacked with all their strength. They cooperated with Yang Xian to block all of Chu Mu's escape routes. "Attack!" Lin Yi shouted. He unsheathed his sword without hesitation and rushed out. Jiang Fan and Lin Haichao followed closely behind. Sword light burst out. Humans were intelligent and knew how to cooperate better. After all, virtual beasts could not compare to humans. Chu Mu had nowhere to dodge. He abruptly rushed forward and slashed his sword towards Yang Xian. Behind him, 4 sword lights followed. Lin Yi and the other 2's sword lights also rushed towards the 4 people. They wanted to kill Chu Mu but did not want to be killed. The 4 people quickly withdrew their swords, turned around, and attacked Lin Yi and the other 2. After the threat behind him disappeared, Chu Mu secretly breathed a sigh of relief. The sword light became even fiercer. Yang Xian's swordsmanship was indeed very powerful. His use of power was also much better than Qiuminglei's. However, compared to Chu Mu, there was still a clear gap. Chu Mu and Yang Xian were both at the first heavenly layer of qi cultivation. They had both mastered the elementary level of sword will and the power of heaven and earth. There was no difference in power. What they competed in was their attainments in swordsmanship, their use of power, and their grasp of timing. As a swordsman, Chu Mu's swordsmanship had become an instinct. He had a clear advantage in this aspect. Yang Xian quickly discovered that his counterattacks were becoming fewer and fewer. He was constantly dodging and blocking. His opponent's sword was like a torrential rain, attacking him from every angle without stopping. Furthermore, each sword contained a terrifying sharpness. There was also a shockwave that caused his sword-wielding hand to gradually turn numb. The 2 figures fought fiercely on the wooden bridge. Their swords collided, causing countless sparks to fly. The crisp sounds were ear-piercing. Yang Xian was constantly retreating, while Chu Mu was constantly attacking. Yang Xian's expression was unsightly. Chu Mu's strength had completely exceeded his expectations. He was at a disadvantage, and it was difficult for him to counterattack. Yang Xian wanted to retreat, but Chu Mu's attacks were too fast. He did not have the chance to escape. "Chu Mu, let's forget about this today. In the future, we'll mind our own business," said Yang Xian. "Otherwise, Night Underworld Hall won't rest until you're dead." If Yang Xian had only said the first part, Chu Mu might have considered letting Yang Xian go. After all, his goal wasn't to fight with Night Underworld Hall. However, Yang Xian's last words had infuriated Chu Mu. His sword slashed down, and with a twist of his wrist, the sword flipped over and knocked Yang Xian's sword aside. Then, it coiled up, leaving Yang Xian's chest wide open. With a bang, accompanied by the sound of bones shattering, Yang Xian uncontrollably took a few steps back. What greeted him was a terrifying golden sword light that seemed capable of cleaving apart mountains. With a pucci, blood splattered. Half of Yang Xian's body had been cut in half. Yang Xian's eyes widened as he stared fixedly at Chu Mu. Then, he fell backward dead. On the other side, 3 of the 4 people fighting Lin Yi's group had also been killed. Only Chiu Minglei had managed to escape. Unfortunately, when he rushed in Chu Mu's direction, what greeted him was a sharp sword light. Behind the sword light was a pair of cold eyes. Chapter 12:18. In the depths of the wilderness, Chern Gang was slightly startled. He muttered to himself, "What happened to junior brother Yang? Why did he lose 1,000 genius points and drop his ranking?" Zhu Tiantong was also astonished. His face sank. Yang Xian's ranking might have dropped because someone else had comprehended something and obtained genius points, thus surpassing him. However, the fact that he had 1,000 points less could only mean one thing: Yang Xian had died once. Yang Xian was at the first heavenly layer. Every time he died, his qi cultivation or physique cultivation points would be randomly dropped. If he fell below the first heavenly layer, the 1,000 genius points he received would naturally be deducted. He would have to advance to the first heavenly layer to gain more. If Yang Xian had been killed by a void beast, there would be nothing to say. However, if Yang Xian had been killed by someone else, this grudge must be avenged. No matter who it was, anyone who dared to kill a member of the Dark Night Hall had to be prepared for the Dark Night Hall's revenge. Yang Xian and Chiu Minglei did not inform Chern Gang and Zhu Tiantong of their actions. "Look, senior brother Chu's ranking has risen to 4th. Yang Xian's ranking dropped several places in an instant. Under the Dark Night Tribe's resurrection steel, Yang Xian, Chiu Minglei, and the others who had been resurrected all had gloomy expressions. Even their eyes were bloodshot. The hatred in their hearts could not be washed away by the torrential river. It was obvious that this matter would not be settled so easily. Chu Mu also knew that this matter would not be settled so easily. However, he was not afraid. Originally, he had thought that death would be the end of it. Only now did he know that one of the 2 celestial layers of qi and body tempering had dropped by 1 celestial layer. Thinking about it, if one's qi and body tempering had dropped by 1 celestial layer, the price would be too great. No matter which Yang Xian's qi and body tempering had dropped, it would take some time for him to recover. It would be very difficult for him to catch up. "Junior brother Chu, let's hunt a void beast together?" Lin Yi invited. The battle just now had made their eyes shine. Chu Mu was very strong. "Thank you, senior brother Lin, junior brother Jiang. However, I still prefer to travel alone," Chu Mu said. "All right then. I hope to see junior brother Chu return to the top," Lin Yi said with a smile. After crossing the wooden bridge and entering the wilderness, the group split up. Chu Mu ran at full speed, covering more than a meter with each step. His speed was extremely high, and his legs seemed to have turned into wheels. Like a wild horse, he ran deep into the wilderness and headed in the direction of the Wolf Valley. As soon as he entered the Wolf Valley, Chu Mu stopped and carefully looked around. He discovered that there were traces of other people. 7. Chu Mu muttered to himself as he headed in different directions. If he encountered others, there might be unnecessary conflict. In the Wolf Valley there were many red-eyed wolves. Not long after, Chu Mu killed 3 red-eyed wolves with his sword and obtained 3 strands of rank 1 ethereal qi. After absorbing the ethereal qi, he realized that the effects of the ethereal qi were greatly reduced. It was only 1/10 of what it was before. In other words, absorbing a strand of level 1 illusory qi could only increase one's strength by 50 kilograms. If one were to absorb level 1 illusory qi to cultivate, one would need at least 100 strands of level 1 illusory qi to advance from the first heaven to the second heaven. Cultivating both qi and level 1 illusory qi meant that one would need at least 200 strands of level 1 illusory qi. No wonder it was said that cultivating both qi and level 1 illusory qi would consume more resources. This was not a good news. The good news was that killing the red-eyed wolves this time was much easier. He could kill one with a casual swing of his sword. Even if he was surrounded by 10 red-eyed wolves, he could still kill them easily. It was completely different from yesterday. Chu Mu was not complacent. Instead, he worked even harder and tried his best to study how to kill the red-eyed wolves in a more direct, faster, and sharper manner. When he killed the 18th red-eyed wolf, he encountered another red-eyed battle wolf. The incomparably ferocious crimson-eyed battle wolves led a group of lackeys and attacked from different angles. Good timing, Chu Mu said excitedly. His right hand shook and the black iron sword vibrated. Golden light flowed as he stabbed out with his sword. The sharp sword exploded with power and pierced through the forehead of a red-eyed wolf, easily breaking its skull. It was as weak as tofu. A terrifying pale golden chi pierced through the red-eyed wolf's body and shot out from its butt. This sword did not use the power of vibration. It was only supported by the sword intent and the power of gold. With this sword, Chu Mu vaguely caught onto something. His figure moved swiftly, avoiding the sharp claws of the red-eyed battle wolf. He waved his sword and killed one red-eyed wolf after another. Cultivating both Qi and level 1 celestial layer allowed Chu Mu to face the red-eyed battle wolf with ease. Not long after, the red-eyed battle wolf's brothers were all dead, leaving it alone to face Chu Mu. Chu Mu was looking forward to it. Yesterday, he fought the red-eyed battle wolf with great difficulty. He wondered what would happen today. With a sudden leap, he pounced forward. His sharp wolf claws flickered with a cold glint, but his trajectory was clearly visible. Chu Mu didn't retreat but instead advanced. He charged forward, and his black iron sword pierced forward like a meteor breaking through the moon. The golden light pierced through the air. The sword was like a flying immortal. The red-eyed battle wolf waved its claws. The claws broke through the air and grabbed at the golden sword light. An ear-piercing sound exploded and sparks flew. The red-eyed battle wolf's other claw grabbed from the side. It seemed to tear a few marks in the air, causing Chu Mu's face to hurt. Slashing with his sword, they collided again. Sparks flew as he used the force to spring up and thrust out his sword. The sword intent and the power of gold burst out in an instant. The sword's speed increased rapidly. The power condensed at the tip of the sword. It was incomparably sharp, as if it could pierce through the air. That sharp light caused the red-eyed battle wolf's scarlet eyes to reveal a trace of fear. This sword was too fast. There was no way to dodge. Chu Mu only felt that the sword in his hand had pierced something hard. With a little more force, the sharp light condensed at the tip of the sword broke through the hard object. The red-eyed battle wolf's body trembled and it let out a wail. Its forehead was cut open by the sword. The sword went straight through its head. A terrifying power exploded in its body, shattering its internal organs. Pulling out the sword, the sound of the sword rubbing against the bones was obscure. Blood spurted out from the sword like a fountain. The scarlet eyes quickly dimmed. Its body fell to the ground, twitching a few times before it died. There's actually no notification. It seems that this sword is not considered a sword art. Chu Mu thought. After comprehending the sword intent and the power of gold, Chu Mu came up with an idea. Could he also obtain talent points if he created his own sword art? Therefore, he integrated his own attainments in sword arts and integrated his own power. In battle, he consciously guided the power to explode out, causing greater destruction than usual. Of course, doing so would consume more power than usual. It would be at least several times more, maybe even more than 10 times more. It already had a shape. As long as he continued to work hard, Chu Mu believed that he would be able to create a sword art to increase his strength. This red-eyed battle wolf gave Chu Mu 6 strands of rank 1 illusory chi. However, there was nothing else. This time, Chu Mu obtained a total of 12 strands of rank 1 illusory chi. It had only been 4 hours since he entered the Wolf Valley, but he had already obtained 30 strands of rank 1 illusory chi. Chu Mu absorbed all 30 strands of rank 1 illusory chi. His physique strengthened once again. His strength reached 13,000 gene, even stronger. Using battle to nurture battle. Now, even the red-eyed battle wolf could not withstand 3 strikes from me. I wonder how strong the red-eyed wolf king is? Chumu thought to himself. His sharp gaze looked towards the depths of the Wolf Valley. There might be a red-eyed wolf king there. Striding forward, he quickly headed towards the depths of the Wolf Valley, leaving behind a ground full of wolf corpses. The deeper he went into the Wolf Valley, the more red-eyed wolves he encountered. They pounced on him without fear of death, but all of them died under Chumu's sword. Chumu obtained another 20 strands of rank 1 illusory chi. His physique strengthened once again, and his strength reached 15,000 gene. He planned to first reach the peak of the first celestial layer of body cultivation, then increase his chi cultivation, and then break through to the second celestial layer. The breakthrough to the second celestial layer would definitely be more difficult than the first celestial layer. He encountered the third red-eyed battle wolf. As soon as the red-eyed battle wolf appeared, Chumu dashed towards it. His footsteps were fast and his speed was swift. Like a gust of wind, he raised his black iron sword. The sword light was dazzling and then it was restrained. Immediately after, the power passed through the tip of the sword, turning into a golden light, piercing through the void. Before the red-eyed battle wolf could even show its might, its forehead was pierced through. The hole went through its head, straight to its neck. The power exploded, exploding into its body, shattering its internal organs. The red-eyed battle wolf's body trembled violently, and fell to the ground. It struggled and twitched a few times before dying. 4 strands of first-grade void chi rose from the red-eyed battle wolf's corpse. Among the red-eyed battle wolves that Chumu had killed, his harvest was the least. However, 4 strands of first-grade void chi were better than nothing. With a roll, he directly absorbed them and quickly digested them, increasing his strength by another 400 gene. Suddenly, a wolf howl sounded from the depths of the Wolf Valley. Like a storm, it rolled and spread, rushing in all directions. The momentum was astonishing, containing a terrifying power, as if it was a king above the common people. It made all the hair on Chumu's body stand on end. It's the Wolf King. Chumu raised his head, looking towards the direction of the sound. He was secretly excited. Is that the sound of a red-eyed wolf? It's definitely not an ordinary red-eyed wolf, nor is it an elite red-eyed wolf. It's very likely to be the king of the red-eyed wolves. The 7 people who had entered the Wolf Valley earlier than Chumu trembled when they heard the sound. Their faces changed as they thought of something, and their faces were filled with excitement. Each of the 7 of them had a cultivation base of the first heavenly layer, and 2 of them had even reached the first heavenly layer. They had accidentally discovered the Wolf Valley and entered it. They had encountered many red-eyed wolves. The 7 of them had worked together to hunt them down, continuously obtaining void chi. Each of them had obtained great benefits, and their strength had increased. Not long ago, the 7 of them had worked together to kill a red-eyed battle wolf. Not only had they obtained 6 strands of first-grade void chi, but they had also obtained a basic movement technique. Now that they had heard the sound of the Wolf King, they were even more surprised. Killing the Wolf King would definitely bring them great rewards. The 7 of them immediately decided to enter the Wolf Valley to find the red-eyed Wolf King and kill it. At the same time, Chumu had also decided to enter the Wolf Valley to find the red-eyed Wolf King. He wanted to see how strong the red-eyed Wolf King was before deciding whether to hunt it down. Chapter 12:19. The wolf's shadow pounced and a golden light flashed across the sky. The sword slashed the wolf in half. The golden sword light pierced through the air and pierced through the wolf's body. The wolf's body flipped in the air, and the sword slashed down again. Chumu obtained 3 strands of first-grade void chi. After absorbing and strengthening them, his strength increased to 15,700 pounds. Now, with Chumu's strength, in the entire outer valley of the Wolf Valley, except for the crimson-eyed Wolf King, No other wolf could block Chu Mu's sword, not even the crimson-eyed battle wolf. When he finally reached the deepest part of the outer valley of the Wolf Valley, Chu Mu was surprised to see 7 figures. Not far from him, the 7 people also noticed Chu Mu. I can't believe he went into the Wolf Valley alone. The leader of the 7 was Yi Qian, a secret disciple of the Great Thousand Sword Sect, ranked 8th on the Galaxy Genius list. He was also the leader of the Great Thousand Sect in the Night Dark tribe. Senior brother, should we warn him? Someone next to him asked. No, if he dares to go into the Wolf Valley alone, his strength must be extraordinary. Maybe he's one of the top 10. It's best if we don't offend him, Yi Qian said. But what if he causes trouble when we're dealing with the Wolf King? Then we'll kill him, Yi Qian said as if he was stating a fact. Not wanting to offend him didn't mean that they should retreat. Chu Mu's idea was to let the 7 people test the strength of the crimson-eyed Wolf King. In the deepest part of the outer valley of the Wolf Valley, on top of a huge grayish-brown rock, stood an awe-inspiring giant wolf. This wolf's body was bigger than the red-eyed battle wolf, but it didn't look bloated. Instead, it looked stronger and more agile, giving off a strong visual impact. The giant wolf's fur was darker than the crimson-eyed battle wolf's. It was almost black and looked like steel needles. The wolf's mouth was more protruding than the crimson-eyed battle wolf's, and its fangs were crisscrossed. It looked very ferocious. The claws were incomparably sharp as they clawed at the huge rock, leaving behind streaks of marks that flickered with cold light. A terrifying aura burst out from its body. Below the boulder, a pack of crimson-eyed wolves had gathered. 12 crimson-eyed battle wolves led the pack, and there were over 100 other crimson-eyed wolves. They were orderly, as if they were an army that was being inspected by the Wolf King. Chu Mu and Yi Qian's group of 7 slowly approached from 2 different directions. When they saw this scene, they were shocked and their scalps went numb. Not to mention the Wolf King, just the 12 crimson-eyed battle wolves and over 100 strong crimson-eyed battle wolves were not something they could handle. Even Chu Mu himself, who could easily kill a crimson-eyed battle wolf, would be in danger if he was surrounded by several crimson-eyed battle wolves. 12 crimson-eyed battle wolves were enough to tear him to pieces. Not to mention the 12 crimson-eyed battle wolves, just the hundreds of stronger crimson-eyed battle wolves were enough to make him suffer. Senior brother Yi, what should we do? One of them asked. Yi Qian muttered to himself as his mind raced. Senior brother Yi, I have an idea. Why don't we directly provoke the Wolf King? Given the Wolf King's arrogance, he might directly fight with us. One of the disciples' eyes brightened as he spoke. We can give it a try, Yi Qian said. Wolves were proud and aloof creatures, especially the Wolf King, which possessed a certain level of intelligence. Therefore, if they directly challenged the Wolf King, it might work. They wouldn't need to face the pack of crimson-eyed battle wolves and crimson-eyed battle wolves. I will directly challenge the Wolf King. If it works, we will fight. If it doesn't work, we can only temporarily retreat, Yi Qian said. As it stood up, the Wolf King's fiery eyes fell on Yi Qian. Even though they were a few thousand meters away, Yi Qian still felt a great pressure pressing down on him. Immediately after, the hundreds of crimson-eyed battle wolves below all locked their gazes on Yi Qian, causing his expression to change drastically. Cold sweat seeped out of his forehead and dripped down. Zhao Fu didn't say anything as he pointed his sword at the scarlet-eyed Wolf King. After all, the scarlet-eyed Wolf King couldn't understand human language, but it was clear that he was provoking the scarlet-eyed Wolf King. A hint of mockery flashed through its fiery red eyes. It let out a howl as if it was giving an order. All the crimson-eyed battle wolves that were about to attack immediately quieted down. The Wolf King exerted force on its 4 limbs and leaped into the air. It landed a few dozen meters away, then with a bang, it started to run wildly again. It was like a black lightning bolt, rapidly approaching Yi Qian. So fast! Chu Mu was shocked. Not long after, the crimson-eyed Wolf King leaped once again. Yi Qian only saw a black figure flash in front of him. Soon after, 3 cold rays of light tore through the sky, causing him to feel as if his body was being torn apart. Kill! With a loud shout to boost his courage, Yi Qian fiercely slashed out with his sword. A red light flashed. It was the power of fire. The other 6 people also slashed out with their swords, adding their sword intent and other powers. They exploded with all their strength and attacked. The Wolf King waved its claws and a cold light flashed past. With an ear-piercing sound, it broke apart a few swords. Another claw reached out, and at the same time, it opened its protruding mouth and bit viciously. With one attack, the Wolf King broke through the encirclement of the 7 people. It landed on a huge rock. Its tall and strong body made people feel intimidated. It quickly counterattacked. Yi Qian and the other 6 people surrounded the Wolf King again and attacked from all angles. Sword after sword, they exploded with all their strength. After a few collisions, a black iron sword was broken by the Wolf King's sharp claws. Its head stretched forward and opened its mouth to bite the genius swordsman who had broken his sword. 2 swords took the opportunity to slash at the Wolf King's body. Unexpectedly, the sound of metal clashing could be heard. There were faint sparks flying. It was the friction between the swords and the needle-like black fur on the Wolf King's body. Only a few strands of black fur were cut off. They couldn't cause any real damage to the Wolf King. The Wolf King slashed down again. In the cold light, drops of blood rolled. Another person was killed. Yi Qian stabbed out with his sword. It was earth-shattering. Even if it was a piece of steel, it would have a hole in it. With a flash of cold light, the Wolf King's claws clashed with the tip of the sword. The huge force caused the black iron sword to bend and almost break. Exhaling, Zhang Xian unleashed his strength and straightened his swords. The scarlet-eyed Wolf King remained motionless while Yi Qian took a few steps back. The 4 swords charged forward from 4 different directions. Their auras surged and the sword light flashed violently. The 4 sword lights slashed at the red-eyed Wolf King's sturdy body at the same time. The sound of metal clashing could be vaguely heard, but the red-eyed Wolf King only managed to cut off some of its fur. The red-eyed Wolf King actually stood up on its hind legs and spat out a mouthful of blood. The sharp and violent sound wave was like a gust of wind, causing everyone to feel dizzy. The Wolf King's sharp claws slashed out at high speed. The cold light flashed and the sound of metal clashing filled the air. The 4 black iron swords were all broken. Yi Qian's face changed. He quickly yelled, "Run!" The Wolf King was too scary. There was no way to fight it. If they continued to fight, everyone would be killed. They would lose a layer of sky and suffer heavy losses. Yi Qian's sword exploded like a raging inferno. Borrowing the force of the collision, Yi Qian retreated. The other 4 also retreated. Using their broken swords as hidden weapons, they threw them at the red-eyed Wolf King. Then, they turned around and ran away at full speed. The Wolf King roared. How could it let them escape? It jumped up as fast as the wind and pounced on them. It tore one of them apart from the back. Then, it rushed to the other and bit down. No one could stop the terrifying Wolf King. They were killed one by one. In the end, even Yi Qian couldn't escape. After a slight struggle, his black iron sword was also broken by the Wolf King. Without his black iron sword, Yi Qian's strength decreased by at least half. His speed was not as fast as the Wolf King, so he was no match for it. At this point, the team of 7 led by Yi Qian had all been killed by the Wolf King's sharp claws. After winning the battle, the Wolf King howled at the sky. Its howl was shocking. A powerful aura surged out from its strong body. As if responding to the scarlet-eyed Wolf King, the other scarlet-eyed wolves all raised their heads towards the sky and let out howls. Their howls rose and fell, causing Chu Mu, who was hiding behind a huge rock, to feel a chill run down his spine. The Wolf King's fiery eyes swept across the area. Its gaze was extremely sharp, as if it was looking for other strange creatures that could walk upright. It didn't find anything. It jumped back into the pack of wolves. With another jump, it returned to its original spot on the huge rock. Chu Mu let out a sigh of relief. He was still surprised by the Wolf King's strength. The Wolf King's strength hasn't been fully displayed yet. Carefully thinking back to the fight between the red-eyed Wolf King and the 7 swordsmen, the 7 swordsmen weren't weak, especially the leader, who was rather powerful. However, under their combined efforts, they were still killed by the red-eyed Wolf King. Chu Mu felt that the red-eyed Wolf King hadn't displayed its full strength. If he were to fight the Wolf King with all his strength, what would happen? The result would be that he would be killed and torn to pieces by the Wolf King. With my chi and chi cultivation, my ability to use my strength, my explosive speed, and my reflexes, I should be able to contend with the Wolf King for a while. Chu Mu thought to himself. However, he frowned slightly. But the Wolf King's stamina and endurance far surpass mine. Even if I can contend with it, it won't be of any use. The most important thing is how to kill it. Under normal circumstances, only those who have reached the 2nd heavenly layer and wielded a tungsten steel sword can fight the red-eyed Wolf King at full strength. But for me, I only need to break through the red-eyed Wolf King's defense. Not only was the red-eyed Wolf King powerful, it was also fast and had a shocking reaction speed. Its claws and fangs were also incomparably sharp. Moreover, the defense of its fur was extremely shocking. However, Chu Mu knew that if he could break through the red-eyed Wolf King's defense, he would be able to fight it. If he wanted to break through the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's defense, he would have to use the tungsten steel sword and the metal sword will. Otherwise, he would have to create the sword technique that he was currently creating, which would have a chance of breaking through the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's defense. I wonder what the Wolf King's beast technique is? Chu Mu asked curiously. Chapter 12:20. Why did Senior Brother Ye's ranking drop? Not only did Senior Brother Ye's ranking drop, but so did the other Senior Brothers and Junior Brothers. The Night Nether Tribe's ranking on the Galaxy Genius list changed again. Senior Brother Yi, what should we do now? Let's hunt down the Void Beast and recover our strength first. The Red-Eyed Wolf King is very powerful. I think only a level 2 genius can fight against it. Yi Qian said with a gloomy face. He had no choice. His cultivation had dropped by 1 level 2 and his genius points had dropped by 1,000. His ranking had dropped out of the top 10. Do you think that person is also going to attack the Red-Eyed Wolf King? Well, that's impossible. The Red-Eyed Wolf King is so powerful. He can't defeat the Red-Eyed Wolf King alone. They didn't know Chu Mu. Chu Mu didn't attack the Red-Eyed Wolf King immediately because he wasn't sure. He wanted to improve his strength. He had to be stronger and break the Red-Eyed Wolf King's defense. Now, Chu Mu put his hope on the sword technique that was taking shape. Using this sword technique's method of exerting force, he killed a few more red-eyed wolves. After absorbing them, his physical strength reached 16,000 kilograms. Since he couldn't find any more red-eyed wolves, Chu Mu could only use the boulder to practice his sword. There was a huge rock in front of him. It was very hard. The black iron sword didn't inject any energy into it. When he stabbed it with all his strength, he could only leave a white mark on it and break some stone chip. Holding his breath and concentrating, Chu Mu kept staring at the huge rock in front of him. On the huge rock, there were hundreds of sword holes. They were made when Chu Mu was practicing his sword. The depth of the holes were different, and the size of the cuts were also different. Now, he felt that after hundreds of practice adjustments, this sword technique was about to take shape. Staring at the small white dot that was cut open by his normal sword, Chu Mu's eyes didn't blink and his pupils didn't move. The hand that was holding the sword naturally hung down. His entire body didn't move at all, as if he had become a statue. Gradually, even his breathing became very weak. The world before Chu Mu's eyes seemed to be swallowed up by darkness. It gradually disappeared, shrinking from all directions behind him into nothingness. In the end, all that was left was the small white dot on the huge rock. Little White had become the only world in existence, which gradually expanded in front of Chu Mu's eyes. It was as if a heaven and earth were crushing toward him with unparalleled might, as if it were trying to crush everything into nothingness. It was incomparably tough. It was as if all sharpness and sharpness could not be destroyed. Everything would be turned into powder under that toughness. Suddenly, Chu Mu's right hand, which was holding the sword, trembled. The sword that was hanging down was instantly raised. He paused for a moment, accumulated power, and then suddenly burst out. The sword pierced out, as if it was piercing through the 9 heavens, shattering the vault of heaven and turning it into nothingness. This sword was extremely fast, like a falling meteorite. It was earth-shattering and earth-shattering, as if it could pierce through everything. It was extremely fierce. Because it was too fast, the friction between the sword and the air caused the blade to turn slightly red. The air also seemed to be on the verge of being ignited, and a burnt smell filled the air. With the support of the sword intent and the power of metal, the muscles in his body vibrated, transmitting to his arm and then to his wrist. Like a violent tide, all the power rushed to the tip of the sword, causing the speed of the sword to increase rapidly. The tip of the sword seemed to have been burned red by the high temperature, and it vibrated at a high frequency with an extremely small amplitude. It was impossible to see with the naked eye. In an instant, the golden light condensed into the tip of the sword, which seemed to have been burned red, and collided with the toughness that was crushing toward him. There was no pause at all. The hardness that came crushing down was as fragile as a piece of tofu. That hardness was instantly torn apart by the tip of the sword that was imperceptible to the naked eye. It was also imbued with sword will and the power of metal. It was unstoppable as it pressed forward with an irresistible force. The sword, like a flash of golden light, pierced through. A pungent burnt smell filled the air, and everything in front of him disappeared. Chu Mu's black iron sword, from the small white dot, deeply penetrated into the giant rock in front of him, all the way to the sword hilt. With a little force, he pulled the sword out of the giant rock. The sword hole on the giant rock was like a small mouth that was slightly opened. The edge of the hole was smooth and flat, and it was scorched black from the high temperature. You have comprehended a second-grade sword art. You have received 2,000 genius points. The fleeting voice once again sounded in Chu Mu's mind, and only he could hear it. Chu Mu let out a smile. He had finally created this sword art. It was not a waste of his time and effort. Moreover, it was a second-grade sword art, and he received 2,000 genius points directly. The grade of a sword art should be calculated according to the power of the sword art. Chu Mu pondered for a moment. A sword art, the sword intent is the foundation, and it is integrated with the power of heaven and earth. It is considered a first-grade sword art. My sword art has integrated the power of gold, but also the power of vibration. The power of vibration is not inferior to the power of gold. Therefore, it is evaluated as a second-grade sword art. In normal battles, although the sword intent, the power of heaven and earth, and even the power of vibration would be added to the sword, it was only a slight addition, and the consumption was very low. However, the sword art injected the power in an explosive way, so that the power would be released to the maximum in an instant, and the consumption of power would be more. After performing this sword art, Chu Mu felt that a lot of power had been consumed. With his current physical strength of 16,000 pounds and the strength of 10,000 pounds of internal qi, he could only perform it 3 times. After 3 times there would not be much left. This sword art is very powerful, and it is mainly reflected in breaking and tearing everything. It is most suitable to deal with the target with strong defense. Let's call it armor breaking. Chu Mu muttered to himself. He wasn't interested in naming it. He didn't care if it could be passed down through the ages, as long as it was suitable. Just as Chu Mu was happy that he had created a sword art, the people who noticed the Galaxy Genius list were dumbfounded. What happened? Why did Chu Mu's name suddenly jump to first place? Moreover, his genius points increased by 2,000 points, reaching 6,000 points. Is it an illusion? Senior Brother Chu is really amazing. Deputy Sect Leader Xiang, this disciple of our five elements sword sect is not bad, right? White Sky said faintly, and his tone contained a trace of happiness. He is indeed not bad. However, don't fall from first place all the way to the top 50 like before, Xiang Yi retorted, but he was actually very shocked in his heart. Zhu Tiantong, Chen Gang, and the others who were hunting void beasts were all stunned as they felt the change in the Galaxy Genius list. Chu Mu actually increased his genius points by 2,000 points all of a sudden. What happened? Chen Gang was puzzled. Could it be that he comprehended two types of the power of the heavens and earth at once? No, that's impossible. Or did he advance to the second sky? Zhu Tiantong made all kinds of guesses. Lin Yi and the others were stunned at first, but then they all laughed. Chu Mu had returned to first place and was leading by 2,000 points, trampling Zhu Tiantong down. This was very satisfying. Comprehending the power of the heavens and earth was the easiest the first time, but the difficulty would increase several times over. It was impossible to comprehend two types of the power of the heavens and earth at once. Chu Mu must have gained something else. Chu Mu was a disciple of the Five Elements Sword sect, and in name, he was also a member of the Five Elements sect. Most of the members of the Five Elements Sword sect were very happy that he was at the top of the list. Only a few people were unhappy. This change made many people even more motivated and put in more effort to hunt void beasts. After creating a sword technique to break armor, Chu Mu's attack power had been greatly enhanced. He felt that this sword technique was enough to break the tough fur of the Crimson-Eyed Wolf King and cause serious injury to it. Therefore, he decided to challenge the Crimson-Eyed Wolf King. With his strength, even if he could not kill the Crimson-Eyed Wolf King, the wolf might not be able to kill him. But before that, there was one thing he had to do first, which was to recover his strength. He sat down by the giant rock and ran the primary Qi training formula to recover his almost exhausted internal Qi. While his internal Qi was recovering, his physical strength was also recovering. After his internal Qi was fully recovered, Chu Mu picked up the dry food and water and ate to his heart's content. The whole process took about 4 hours, and his physical strength was fully recovered. Looking at the sky, he found that the sun's rays were not so fierce. Gradually, it sank into the west, and there was a faint red glow on the sky. It was almost sunset. It seemed that in about 2 hours, the scorching sun would set in the west, and the sky would be dark, and night would fall. But this time, Chu Mu decided not to return to the Dark Night tribe, but to stay in the Wolf Valley. With his current strength, as long as he was not surrounded by a large number of crimson-eyed wolves, even if they went berserk, they could not do anything to him. Instead, they would be killed by him. As for the consumption of physical strength, as long as he absorbed the void qi from the wolves, he could quickly recover. The problem of food and water was also solved. The 7 men killed by the Crimson-Eyed Wolf King had some dry food with them. After their deaths, their bodies disappeared, but their dry food and water bottles did not disappear. They only needed 1 water bottle, because there was a stream in the Wolf Valley. Chu Mu collected all the dry food, which could last them for 2 days. In fact, Chu Mu was not the only one who had this idea. Some people, such as Zhu Tiantong and Chen Gang, had the same idea. They were strong enough, and they had the cooperation of others. In this case, let's go challenge the Crimson-Eyed Wolf King now, Chu Mu said to himself. After packing up, Lin Yun moved and quickly went to the depths of the valley where the Crimson-Eyed Wolf King was. 15 minutes later, Chu Mu stopped and looked ahead. 12 crimson-eyed battle wolves and hundreds of strong crimson-eyed wolves were scattered in all directions, while the Crimson-Eyed Wolf King was lying on top of a huge rock with its eyes closed, as if it was resting. The wind blew, but the needle-like black fur did not move at all. Even though the Crimson-Eyed Wolf King was lying on the rock, it still emitted a powerful aura. Taking a deep breath, Chu Mu jumped lightly, but landed heavily on the ground. The movement caused the crimson-eyed Wolf King's ears to stand up, and its drooping eyes opened. Its burning eyes stared at Lin Yun. Without saying a word, Chu Mu raised his sword and pointed it at the crimson-eyed Wolf King. His eyes were sharp, and his left hand stretched out a finger, provoking the wolf. The crimson-eyed Wolf King's burning eyes flashed with a hint of mockery. It slowly got up and stretched. Chapter 12:21. The black figure flashed through the air like a bolt of lightning. The moment it leapt up, its sharp claws tore through the air. A cold glint flashed, causing chills to run down Chu Li's spine. Chu Mu's eyes shone brightly. He quickly retreated and brandished his sword. Like quicksilver flowing down the ground, it was impenetrable, blocking all of the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's claws. The sword was infused with sword intent and the power of metal, as well as a slight vibration force, preventing the black iron sword from being broken by the Wolf King's claws. Every time the sword collided, Chu Mu could feel a huge force rushing towards him. It was much stronger than the scarlet-eyed battle wolf, reaching at least 20,000 jin. That was the level of the second celestial layer. Not only was it strong, but it was also extremely fast. It was several times stronger than the scarlet-eyed battle wolf. Moreover, the scarlet-eyed Wolf King was even more outstanding than the scarlet-eyed battle wolf in terms of the use of power. It brought great pressure to Chu Mu. Chu Mu had to concentrate fully to block the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's claws one by one. He then turned his sword and slashed out again, counterattacking. This was Chu Mu's probing attack. He did not expect it to cause any damage to the scarlet-eyed Wolf King. His sword was fast, direct, and unpredictable. Even with the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's abilities, it was unable to block it. In an instant, its chest was sliced open. An obscure sound rang out. The needle-like black fur was cut off. Sparks flew everywhere. The sword, which contained all kinds of power, only left a faint white mark on the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's chest. Chu Mu personally experienced how tough the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's fur was and how strong its defense was. However, if he used armor-piercing, he was confident that he could break through it. However, armor-piercing needed time to accumulate power. Although it was very short, it was not easy to grasp. If he was not careful, the scarlet-eyed Wolf King could dodge or counterattack. As he fought, Chu Mu kept retreating. Although the scarlet-eyed Wolf King had some intelligence, it was not as complicated as humans. It only wanted to kill Chu Mu. Therefore, as Chu Mu kept retreating, it kept approaching and attacking. It was extremely crazy. The terrifying claw shadows filled the air, and the boulders that they cut were as fragile as tofu, shattering one after another. Chu Mu's coarse linen clothes were torn in many places by the force, making him look like a beggar. The terrifying force even made him feel a piercing pain on his skin. The scarlet-eyed Wolf King's claws, head, and mouth could be used for attacking. The claws were extremely sharp, and the fangs in its mouth were not only sharp, but also had an amazing biting power. Its head was incomparably hard, and if one was hit by it, one's body would probably be fractured. The scarlet-eyed Wolf King was able to fully utilize its advantages. The scarlet-eyed Wolf King discovered that this creature that was walking upright was much more powerful than the 7 it had killed not long ago. It was actually able to withstand its attacks for so long. In truth, Chu Mu was also under a great deal of pressure. Although he did his best to dissipate the power of each collision, there was still a portion of the impact that made his arms and palms numb, and the web between his thumb and forefinger hurt. Fortunately, he was proficient in all kinds of ways to dissipate and borrow power. Furthermore, he was able to alternately use the black iron sword in his left and right hands to withstand the attack. In a flash, a cold light flashed in front of his eyes. Chu Mu could feel the bone-piercing cold. Just a few millimeters more and his face would have been torn apart. After a long battle, the scarlet-eyed Wolf King was enraged. Its scarlet-red eyes suddenly emitted a shocking light. Immediately after, Chu Mu felt a terrifying wave of energy coming from the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's body. It was extremely violent, as if there was a ferocious beast hidden within the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's body that was about to break out. Beast power. A thought flashed through his mind, and a word came out. When the scarlet-eyed Wolf King was fighting with Yi Qian and the others, it did not use its beast power. But now it was using it. A strong sense of danger swept through Chu Mu's body, causing him to be greatly alarmed. Soon after, a red light gathered on the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's raised claws. With a swoosh, it burned like a flame, turning into a giant flaming claw. A terrifying heat rippled out, spreading out like a raging inferno, incinerating everything. Chu Mu only felt his mouth and tongue dry. It was as if he had walked in the desert for an entire day without drinking a mouthful of water. The giant flaming claw ruthlessly fell like a meteor, locking onto Chu Mu. The terrifying heat caused Chu Mu to be terrified. The scarlet-eyed Wolf King's beast skill. Flaming Claw. When the flaming claw came out, raging flames burned the sky, intending to turn Chu Mu into ashes. Chu Mu hurriedly retreated. His footsteps were quick and the vibration force exploded. He did not dare to take it head-on, nor did he dare to use his sword to block it. He felt that the black iron sword would definitely not be able to withstand this claw and would shatter in an instant. If he lost the black iron sword, he would not be able to use his armor-piercing swordsmanship. His strength would also be reduced by half, and he could only escape. But now the sun was gradually setting. If he lost his sword, it would be difficult for him to survive in the Wolf Valley at night. Chu Mu retreated quickly, but the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's flaming claw was not slow either. As soon as it fell, the ground was immediately charred black, and the sand and stones on the ground began to soften. Chu Mu only felt that his entire body was burning. His lips were so dry that they were about to split open. His throat felt like it was stuffed with charcoal, and his skin also became dry. Because of the high temperature, even his consciousness was affected. He was inexplicably in a trance. The sword intent exploded, cutting off the trance in his consciousness. He instantly regained consciousness. Ignoring the injuries on his body, he explosively used the vibration force to support his legs. He fiercely stomped on the ground and retreated in an instant. He narrowly avoided the attack. The flaming claw fell with a loud boom, and charred dust flew everywhere. Every drop of the flaming claw was terrifyingly hot, and could easily burn an ordinary person to death. A 3-inch deep, charred claw mark appeared on the ground. 4 streaks of fire, with the claw mark as the starting point, shot out from the ground like knives. They shot out for more than 5 meters, creating 4 charred trenches. The sand and stones in the trenches had all melted into liquid. The terrifying attack shocked Chu Mu, but it also excited him. Killing such a powerful scarlet-eyed Wolf King would give him a greater sense of accomplishment. The scarlet-eyed Wolf King was enraged that it could not kill the creature in front of it after activating the beast skill Flaming Claw. It suddenly charged forward, and with its incomparably hard head, it charged forward at high speed. Chu Mu hurriedly dodged, but the boulder behind him was directly smashed into pieces. A few pieces exploded towards Chu Mu, but he quickly waved his sword and used his dexterity to throw those pieces of rock at the scarlet-eyed Wolf King. The pieces of rock bombarded the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's body, but the scarlet-eyed Wolf King was not affected at all. Instead, it was the shattered pieces of rock that angered the scarlet-eyed Wolf King even more. Chu Mu's goal was to enrage the scarlet-eyed Wolf King and make it use the beast skill Flaming Claw again. Only then would he have the opportunity to use the armor-piercing technique. Beast skills were like swordsmanship, they needed some time to be used. Just now, because the power of the beast skill was too strong, and Chu Mu was continuously pushed back by the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's attacks, he could not seize the opportunity to use it again. After a fierce battle, Chu Mu gradually got used to the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's attack rhythm and intensity. His potential was further developed, and it became easier for him to deal with the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King's frenzied attack. Chu Mu also tried his best to avoid using his sword to clash with the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King's claws. Although he could deflect the force every time, if this happened too many times, the black iron sword would not be able to withstand it. One strike, he only needed one chance to strike. After many attacks, Chu Mu dodged them one by one, causing destruction to the surroundings. It also allowed Chu Mu to repeatedly throw rocks at his body. Although he was unharmed, it did not feel good. As the king of a tribe, his dignity was greatly challenged. Angry, the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King was even angrier. Its body once again exploded with a terrifying aura, as if a peerless beast had awoken. Chu Mu's eyes lit up. The Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King raised its claws, and the flames once again grew bigger. With an even more ferocious stance, the claws fell, as if they could shatter everything. This time, Chu Mu would not let go of this opportunity. He hurriedly dodged to the side. His footsteps were quick, and he was extremely focused, as if he was dancing on the tip of a sword. With a boom, the ground shook and exploded. The claw print was more than 3 inches deep. For terrifying flames once again rushed out like blades. Now was the time. The step that he took forward suddenly stopped. He raised the black iron sword, and with a slight pause, his body's powerful inner chi instantly exploded. The sword pierced forward in a straight line. Then, with the support of the sword will and the power of gold, all the muscles in his body vibrated and flowed into the black iron sword like waves. It produced a powerful driving force, causing the speed of the sword to more than double. The smell of burning filled the air again. The air seemed to have been ignited. A red light appeared on the body of the sword, and the power rushed to the tip of the sword. The tip of the sword, which seemed to have been burned red, was covered with a layer of gold. The sword vibrated at an extremely high frequency that the naked eye could not see. One sword to break the armor. The unstoppable sword, which could even pierce the sky, pierced towards the right eye of the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King. Sensing the great danger, the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King hurriedly moved its head to dodge the sword. In an instant, the tip of the sword came into contact with the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King's forehead. A strong resistance caused the sword to bend slightly. Chu Mu's wrist shook, and the power exploded once again, causing the sword to straighten. With a piercing shattering sound, the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King's incomparably hard skull was torn apart and pierced. The sword pierced through the skull, and the intense friction between the sword and the skull caused a scorching heat to spread. A terrifying power exploded within the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King's head, and in an instant, the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King's brain was ground to mush. The Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King's eyes widened. Its gaze was like a burning flame, but it slowly extinguished and dimmed. With great difficulty, it swiped out a claw, still wanting to kill Chu Mu. However, it fell powerlessly an inch away from Chu Mu. With a bang, the tall and strong Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King fell to the ground, causing a cloud of dust to fly. Seeing that the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King was killed, Chu Mu heaved a sigh of relief. Suddenly, he felt pain all over his body, especially the muscles in his calves. It felt as if they had been torn apart. His entire body was exhausted, and he sat down on the ground. Although the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King was dead, Chu Mu had almost exhausted all of his energy, and was even injured. Fortunately, there were no other Scarlet-Eyed Wolves nearby, or else he would have been in danger. Chapter 12:22. The setting sun was like blood, dyeing half of the sky red. The clouds seemed to have been ignited, and the sky was dyed red. A cool breeze blew, ruffling his hair. Unknowingly, a feeling of dusk filled the air. After resting for a while, Chu Mu felt that he had recovered a little. Not far from the corpse of the Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King, there were some things floating up. There was void chi, and there were also balls of light. 20 strands of rank 1 void chi. 1 strand of rank 2 void chi. This harvest is not bad. Chu Mu looked and smiled. The Scarlet-Eyed Wolf King had at most 6 strands of rank 1 void chi. The scarlet-eyed Wolf King had 20 strands of rank 1 void chi and 1 strand of rank 2 void chi, which was equal to 30 strands of rank 1 void chi. Just the void chi harvest was not bad. However, if it was just in terms of void chi, it was actually not worth it, because when he fought fiercely with the Wolf King, he was surrounded by danger and was almost killed. Even if he killed the Wolf King, he was exhausted and suffered light injuries. He only obtained 30 strands of level 1 void chi. It was easier to kill 30 crimson-eyed wolves. What really made Chu Mu happy were the 2 balls of light. One of them was bright yellow and emitted a halo of light. It looked very attractive. The other was transparent and seemed to contain something inside. The bright yellow ball of light was closest to Chu Mu. Taking a deep breath, he picked up the water bottle and drank a few mouthfuls of water to relieve the burning feeling in his body. Chu Mu stood up. His calf muscles still felt a trace of pain. Taking 2 steps forward, he approached the corpse of the scarlet-eyed Wolf King. He reached out and grabbed the closest bright yellow ball of light, absorbing it in an instant. Intermediate body transformation technique. As soon as the bright yellow ball of light entered his body, it turned into a stream of information that entered his mind. Another figure appeared and began to practice, making Chu Mu very happy. Intermediate body transformation technique, in the bookstore, was worth 1,000 strands of rank 2 void chi. Compared to the intermediate body transformation technique, 20 strands of rank 1 void chi and 1 strand of rank 2 void chi were nothing. Immediately, Chu Mu's gaze fell on the other ball of light. Based on his 2 experiences, any clump of light was definitely something good. Its value was not something that a few strands of faux chi could compare to. When Chu Mu reached out to grab the transparent ball of light, he felt a sense of danger. The sound of wind breaking instantly rang out. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of cold light shooting through the air at an extremely fast speed. 1 shot towards Chu Mu's hand, while 3 shot towards Chu Mu's body. It was extremely ruthless. After the cold light, there were even more figures rapidly approaching. Chu Mu's extended left hand swayed, dodging the cold light and grabbing the transparent ball of light. Immediately after, his body spun in the air, causing the 3 cold light beams to shoot past him. His right hand gripped the black iron sword that was stuck in between the Wolf King's eyebrows. With a sudden burst of strength, he pulled out the sword and slashed out. The golden-red sword light pierced through the air. With a poochie sound, the blade pierced through the body, and a blood-curdling scream was heard. At the same time, 3 sharp sword lights slashed towards Chu Mu from different angles. Between the gaps of the sword light, there were several cold lights that were extremely sharp and came from tricky angles. This caused Chu Mu's expression to change. With a swing of his sword, the golden-red sword light exploded, shattering the several cold lights and breaking apart 3 more sword light. Although Chu Mu had absorbed most of the force, his own strength had only recovered slightly. Unable to resist, he could not help but take 2 steps back. The sword light came for him again. Immediately after, there were 2 more sword light behind him that were extremely violent. With irresistible force, Chu Mu felt a great sense of danger. Attacking from the front and the back, a figure appeared in the sky. Several cold lights shot down first. Then, a shrill sword light fell from the sky like a meteor, causing Chu Mu's head to feel cold. Under such a siege, if he was in his peak condition, he might be able to dodge or even counterattack. However, at this moment, Chu Mu's calf muscles were still in pain. There was only a strand of inner chi left in his body, and his physical strength had only recovered a little. His strength was only 10% of his peak condition. Chu Mu was very calm. Being besieged was unexpected, and it could only mean that he was not vigilant enough. After exhausting his strength, all his aspects were affected, and his perception was greatly weakened. That was why he was attacked. The purpose of attacking him was either because of his wealth, or because the people of Night Netherhall wanted to take revenge. But no matter which reason it was, Chu Mu knew that this time, he was probably going to die. Even if I die, I will take a few with me. Hardening his resolve, Chu Mu did not dodge. He abruptly took a step forward and a resolute aura spread out. The sword in his hand poured the last bit of strength he had left into his sword, intent and metal power, exploding out with vibrating power. In the hands of an excellent swordsman, even a strand of power could be used to great effect. The golden-red sword light was like a meteor that streaked across the sky. Because of the determination, it looked tragic. It was a desperate attack, and it was like a powerful army. It was so overbearing that it could even cut a part of the mountain. With a clang, the sword broke, and blood filled the air. Then, Chu Mu felt intense pain all over his body. A few swords had pierced through his back and head. He was not dead yet. Chu Mu looked up with difficulty. He saw a mocking face, and his vision quickly turned dark. Holding the sword, his body fell backward on the ground. Then, it quickly faded and disappeared. The transparent ball of light that Chu Mu was holding in his left hand also fell to the ground. Senior Zhou, Junior Brother Li and Junior Brother Wang were killed. Someone said, "If they are dead, then they are dead. Later, I will give them some inner qi to recover their strength." Zhou Xinglong put away the mocking smile on his face and said indifferently. He quickly grabbed the transparent ball of light on the ground and absorbed it. Suddenly, the light on his body flickered. After 3 breaths, the coarse linen clothes on his body were gone, replaced by a full set of grayish-black leather armor and pants. The leather armor was very close to his body, as if it was tailor-made. It made Zhou Xinglong, who originally had an extraordinary appearance, look even more vigorous, as if he was a swordsman. On the leather armor, there was a tattoo of a red-eyed wolf. It was majestic. "Senior Brother Zhou, this is..." The sudden change shocked everyone. Wolf Shadow Armor, 2nd grade Inner Spirit Armor. It can block the attack of the tungsten steel sword without any damage. It can also activate the power of the wolf and become more agile for a certain period of time. Zhou Xinglong's tone could not hide his excitement. This harvest was completely out of his expectations. Other than the wolf shadow armor, there are 21st grade inner chi and 1 2nd grade inner chi. However, the person we killed must be very strong. We have to be careful of his revenge. No worries. With the wolf shadow armor, my strength has become stronger. If he dares to come for revenge, I will let him know my strength, Zhou Xinglong said. A few figures appeared in front of the resurrection monument in the Night Dark tribe. On the Galaxy Genius list, Chu Mu's talent points decreased by 1,000 to 5,000. This caused many people to be confused and disgusted. After being resurrected, Chu Mu's face was gloomy. This time, he had failed miserably. He did not expect that someone would enter the Wolf Valley at dusk and attack him when he was at his weakest state. Burning with anger, Chu Mu could not wait to rush out of the Night Dark tribe and enter the Wolf Valley again to kill all of them to vent his anger. "It's you. If you kill us, you will die as well. You want to live under Senior Zhou's sword." The 2 people who were killed by Chu Mu stared at Chu Mu with hatred on their faces, as if they were the victims. This made Chu Mu's suppressed anger rise instantly. He stared at the 2 people with murderous eyes, causing them to tremble in fear. "Who is Senior Zhou?" Chu Mu asked coldly with a strong murderous aura. "You want to know Senior Zhou's name and take revenge? I won't tell you." Although they were scared by Chu Mu's murderous aura, the 2 were still stubborn. "Zhou Xinglong." Chu Mu suddenly said a name. It was the 7th on the Galaxy Genius list, the esoteric disciple of the Mo Shan sword sect. The 2 people's faces changed immediately, which let Chu Mu know that he had guessed correctly. Although Chu Mu was furious, he knew that he could not do anything in the Night Dark tribe. His sharp eyes made the 2 people tremble in fear. "Tell Zhou Xinglong that my name is Chu Mu. I will take revenge. Tell him to wash his neck and wait." After saying that, Chu Mu turned around and went back to his wooden house. Although he wanted to rush out of the night-dark tribe and kill his way into the Wolf Valley, it was already late. When he arrived at the Wolf Valley, it was already nighttime. The outer valley of the Wolf Valley was not small. It would not be easy to find a few people. Moreover, he had died once, either in chi refining or body tempering. His cultivation level had dropped by one sky. If he entered the Wolf Valley in the dark and encountered a large group of red-eyed wolves, it would be very dangerous. Thinking of this, Chu Mu quickly checked his body. Then, he heaved a sigh of relief. What dropped his cultivation was chi refinement. His meridians were completely empty, without a single drop remaining. Although it was unpleasant, it was fortunate that it wasn't body transformation that dropped. Otherwise, his 16,000 gene of strength would drop to 10,000 gene, and the loss would be even greater. In addition, the coarse linen clothes on his body were brand new. After returning to the wooden house and closing the door, Chu Mu saw a sword hanging on the wall. It looked brand new, but it gave him a strange yet familiar feeling. He reached out and took the sword. There was a scabbard, but this scabbard was different from the black iron sword scabbard. It was dark red, and the pattern on the scabbard was like a wolf baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. The weight of the sword was also different from the black iron sword. It was heavier. When he pulled out the sword, a melodious clanging sound was heard. The threatening red light was like blood. It shone on Chu Mu's eyes, which made his pupils shrink slightly. The head of the sword was like a wolf's head. The hilt was dark red. It was a little rough, but it was not prickly. Instead, it felt good and comfortable. The sword guard was more like fangs protruding out. The body of the sword was light red, and the spine was blood red. The tip of the sword was slimmer than the black iron sword. It was more suitable for stabbing. The edge of the sword was slimmer, but it also seemed to be wider. It was sharper when cutting and cutting. The more Chu Mu looked at it, the more surprised he was. The more he looked, the more delighted he was. A lethal weapon, an absolute lethal weapon. This was a terrifying sword that was full of sharpness. It was a sword that was born for killing. It was a terrifying killing sword. The weight was about a dozen kilograms, making Chu Mu feel that it was even more convenient because his current strength was even greater. Looking at it, Chu Mu suddenly used the tip of his sword to cut his finger, and dripped a drop of blood. Chapter 12:23. Scarlet Blood Sword, Second Grade Void Spirit Sword. It was created by absorbing the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's blood essence under high temperature. There was a 1 in 1,000 chance that it would transform. It was incredibly sharp and had the ability to absorb blood. It could absorb blood to accumulate energy, recover energy, and upgrade its grade. After dripping his blood on the sword, Chu Mu knew everything about the sword. He could not help but be stunned and then pleasantly surprised. The scarlet-eyed Wolf King had released the Flame Claw Beast skill, causing the temperature of the air to rise rapidly. Naturally, the black iron sword was also affected. Then, Chu Mu used the armor-breaking sword art. The sword's speed was astonishing, and after the friction with the scorching air, it produced even more heat. The heat made the black iron sword look like a piece of burning iron. After breaking through the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's forehead and penetrating into its brain, the black iron sword seemed to have been reforged under the high temperature. The scarlet-eyed Wolf King's blood was also scorching hot. It was equivalent to pouring on the sword and being absorbed by the sword, causing the black iron sword to transform. The probability was 1 in 1,000. It had to be said that Chu Mu's luck was extremely good. The black iron sword was first grade, but it did not have any special effects. Therefore, it could not be considered a void spirit sword. The tungsten steel sword was second grade, but it was also not a void spirit sword. The scarlet blood sword was a second-grade void spirit sword. Its sharpness was not inferior to the tungsten steel sword, and it even had the ability to absorb blood to recover energy and upgrade its grade. This sword is enough to cut through the scarlet-eyed Wolf King's skin. Waving the scarlet blood sword, Chu Mu's eyes shone brightly. The harvest from killing the scarlet-eyed Wolf King was really huge. An intermediate body transformation skill worth 1,000 strands of second-grade void chi. Even the black iron sword had mutated into a second-grade void spirit sword, and it also had the ability to absorb blood to upgrade its grade. In addition, there were 20 strands of first-grade void chi and 1 strand of second-grade void chi. There was also that transparent ball of light, but he did not know what it was. Taking a deep breath, he temporarily suppressed the anger in his heart. Forgetting the unhappiness, Chu Mu recalled the intermediate body transformation technique. Just like the primary body transformation technique, the intermediate body transformation technique also had 9 movements. After carefully pondering over them, Chu Mu began to practice according to the first movement. Every movement was fixed for 15 minutes. After completing the 6th movement, the 7th movement became incomparably difficult. Chu Mu didn't panic. He stopped and practiced a round of swordsmanship. After washing up, he felt refreshed and comfortable. He sat cross-legged on the wooden bed. He didn't practice the chi training technique because even if he did, it wouldn't have much of an effect. It was better to spend his time on other things. After calming his mind and clearing his mind of distracting thoughts, Chu Mu recalled his battle with the Crimson-Eyed Wolf King. That battle had been extremely fierce and dangerous. Chu Mu had done his best, risking the possibility of being killed by the flame claw. It was as if he was dancing on the tip of the sword. He had seized the opportunity to break through the armor of the Crimson-Eyed Wolf King. Because the Crimson-Eyed Wolf King had dodged, his sword had pierced through its forehead. Otherwise, if he had pierced through the eye, whether or not he would have been able to kill the Crimson-Eyed Wolf King was still unknown. In general, to kill the Crimson-Eyed Wolf King, strength and luck played a part. Chu Mu couldn't help but think of the Crimson-Eyed Wolf King's beast skill, the Flame Claw. A terrifying heat filled the air. Sand and stones melted in an instant. If it landed on his body, it would be enough to burn him to ashes within 3 breaths. Recalling the terrifying flames of the Flame Claw, Chu Mu felt as if he was once again immersed in it. He felt his entire body heat up, his mouth dry, and his consciousness entered a strange state. He fell into an epiphany. Fire. Fire that filled the sky. The flames surged and burned wildly, spreading out in all directions. There was nowhere to hide. It was as if everything was in the fire, and the fire wanted to burn everything into ashes, to turn it into nothingness. Incomparably scorching, terrifyingly high temperature, astonishingly burning. Chu Mu felt as if his body was being burned to ashes by the terrifying flames. He disappeared, leaving behind only a speck of spiritual light floating in the sea of flames. Time passed slowly. Unknowingly, his little light seemed to have been assimilated by the flames and became a part of them. At this moment, he once again felt that his body was in perfect condition. You have comprehended the beginner level of the power of fire. You have received 1,000 genius points. A fleeting voice sounded in his mind. Immediately, the number of genius points behind Chu Mu's name on the Galaxy Genius list returned to 6,000. He was still at the top of the list. This change was shocking. The time in the heavenly azure virtual world was different from the time in the outside world. A few days in the heavenly azure virtual world were only a few minutes in the outside world. Therefore, the changes on the Galaxy Genius list were seen in a short period of time. I have already grasped the power of fire. Chu Mu was a little surprised. There was some element of luck involved in controlling the power of fire. It was beyond his expectations, but all in all, it was a good thing. At that moment, the sky gradually brightened. Chu Mu opened the door of the wooden house and strode out with the scarlet blood sword in his hand. Not long after, the first rays of the morning sun shone, indicating the arrival of dawn. At that moment, many geniuses had already come out of the wooden houses and were about to leave the Dark Knight tribe. Chu Mu quickened his pace and rushed out of the Dark Knight tribe like a cheetah. He crossed the wooden bridge and quickly entered the wilderness, heading towards the Wolf Valley. If there were no accidents, Zhou Xinglong and the others were most likely still in the Wolf Valley. His stomach growled. He hadn't eaten for a whole night and felt a little hungry. However, he didn't have any hollow chi to buy food and he had entered the wilderness. He could only endure it for now. After he found Zhou Xinglong and the others, he would naturally get food and water to fill his stomach. The night faded and dawn arrived. The berserk red-eyed wolves gradually returned to normal. Chu Mu moved stealthily and encountered a few red-eyed wolves. He unsheathed the scarlet blood sword and killed the red-eyed wolves one by one like red lightning. After absorbing the blood of the red-eyed wolves, the scarlet blood sword's red light became even more demonic. Chu Mu also absorbed a few strands of level 1 hollow chi and turned it into inner chi. He recovered to stage 3 inner chi. When Chu Mu arrived at the entrance of the Wolf Valley, he had already recovered to stage 5 inner chi. As his strength gradually recovered, he comprehended the power of fire and had the scarlet blood sword. His strength would only be stronger than before. Walking quickly into the Wolf Valley, Chu Mu didn't rush in. Instead, he carefully observed the traces on the ground. Based on the traces at the entrance of the Wolf Valley, Chu Mu deduced that up until now, other than himself, the other 7 people and Zhou Xinglong's group had entered the Wolf Valley. However, the traces of the 2 groups covered each other. Chu Mu couldn't distinguish which traces belonged to which group. Should I wait here? Or? After thinking for a while, Chu Mu took a step forward. If he waited here, he might be able to meet Zhou Xinglong and the others, but it probably wouldn't be that fast. It would be a pure waste of time. He came back to Wolf Valley with the intention of revenge, but he also wanted to recover his strength and improve. Following one of the traces, he quickly moved forward. The red-eyed wolves in the Wolf Valley seemed to be endless. After a night of death, they all came back to life. Not long after, Chu Mu killed another 4 red-eyed wolves. In terms of inner chi, he had recovered to stage 9. Because of the blood absorption, the scarlet blood sword's red light was even brighter and more demonic. I didn't expect the Wolf Valley to be so dangerous at night. Fortunately, Senior Zhou's strength has increased greatly. Otherwise, we might have been wiped out. A laugh came from afar and entered Chu Mu's ears. A smile appeared on his face. Although it was dangerous, we also gained a lot. Now that we have all reached the first sky of chi cultivation, our strength has increased. Senior Zhou is also closer to the second sky. Fortunately, I got the wolf shadow armor. Zhou Xinglong pretended to be humble. Chu Mu quickly ran in the direction of the voice. Not long after, he met up with Zhou Xinglong and the others. Perhaps because of the danger at night, Zhou Xinglong's group was left with only 4 people. Every one of them was at the first sky of chi cultivation and had comprehended sword will. Zhou Xinglong had even grasped a type of power of the heavens and earth. It's you. As soon as they met, Zhou Xinglong and the other 3 stared at Chu Mu, who was running in front of them. They were stunned. Soon after, a sinister smile appeared on their faces. Are you here for revenge? If you were to focus on hunting void beasts, I might have let you go. But if you are here for revenge, then be prepared to be killed again. Zhou Xinglong smiled sinisterly. I'll let you experience the power of this wolf shadow armor. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhou Xinglong suddenly raised his left hand. Numerous cold rays instantly shot out, straight as a line, towards Chu Mu. They were like arrows piercing through the air. The other 3 also stomped on the ground and dashed over. They unsheathed their sword light, which was sharp and dazzling. Zhou Xinglong activated the wolf shadow armor's power of the wolf. The scarlet-eyed wolf pattern on the wolf shadow armor shone. A strange power surged through his body, causing Zhou Xinglong's speed to increase by 30%. Like a gust of wind, he followed closely behind the numerous cold rays. He unsheathed his sword, and a dazzling sword light rose. It was like a rainbow piercing through the sun. The sword pierced towards Chu Mu, as if it could pierce through steel. The moment the 4 attacked, they displayed their powerful strength and tacit cooperation. In an instant, Chu Mu was surrounded and attacked. The situation was critical. Chu Mu did not panic in the slightest. He was calm and composed, and a smile hung on the corner of his mouth. Several cold rays shot out first. Suddenly, he raised his right hand and a red light exploded. The scarlet blood sword was unsheathed, and with a slash, several cold rays shot towards the three people. With a bang, dust flew up. Chu Mu's body was like an arrow, shooting straight towards Zhou Xinglong. Compared to Zhou Xinglong, who had activated the power of the wolf, his speed was not slow at all. The scarlet blood sword was like a scarlet lightning that tore through the night. It was extremely overbearing, violent, and swift. Shwa 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 shwa. In an instant, the three slashes had cut through the three black iron swords as if they were vegetables. The scarlet sword light attacked the three sword geniuses, and the sword pierced out again like a meteor chasing after the moon. Zhou Xinglong was shocked. He hurriedly swung his sword, wanting to split Chu Mu's sword. When the two swords collided, Zhou Xinglong's black iron sword was broken. The scarlet sword light instantly pierced through Zhou Xinglong's forehead. "The next time I see you, I will kill you without hesitation," Chu Mu said and pulled out his sword. Chapter 12:24. Zhou Xinglong's ranking dropped in an instant. From then on, Chu Mu had one more enemy. However, he did not mind at all. His intention in entering the Azure Sky virtual world was not to fight, but if someone wanted to deal with him, he would fight back fiercely to let them know that he was not to be trifled with. After putting on the wolf shadow armor, it was adjusted according to Chu Mu's figure. It fit him very well, and he seemed to have an additional vigorous aura. Zhou Xinglong and the other three left behind a lot of food. Although it was simple and tasted average, it was rich in nutrients and energy. After a full meal, Chu Mu could still eat the rest for 2 days. "Next, I'll restore my inner chi to the first layer of heaven and then enter the inner valley," Chu Mu said. The Wolf Valley was divided into the outer valley and the inner valley. The outer valley was the territory of the crimson-eyed wolves, and the inner valley was the territory of the iron-backed wolves. The iron-backed wolves were a Tier 2 virtual beast. Chu Mu quickly entered the outer valley and headed for the crimson-eyed wolf king. He remembered that there were hundreds of strong crimson-eyed wolves gathered there. With his current strength, he should be able to deal with them if he was careful. The crimson-eyed wolf king had not reappeared, and the number of crimson-eyed battle wolves had increased from 12 to 8. There were only about 60 other strong crimson-eyed wolves. There were fewer of them. As long as he was not heavily surrounded, he should not be injured. Moreover, he had the wolf shadow armor, which could completely resist the claws of the crimson-eyed wolves. As for the claws of the crimson-eyed battle wolves, even if they could break through the wolf shadow armor, they would not be able to hurt Chu Mu. He leaped and landed. Instantly, the crimson-eyed battle wolves and the rest of the crimson-eyed wolves all turned to look at him. Their scarlet eyes made one's hair stand on end. Chilling howls rang out. The crimson-eyed wolves had set Chu Mu as their target. They rushed towards him, their ferocious aura billowing. The scene of dozens of crimson-eyed wolves running was very shocking. Chu Mu leaned forward and channeled strength into his legs. With a burst of strength, he shot forward in the dust and actually dashed towards the dozens of strong crimson-eyed wolves. It was as if two armies were facing off against each other. However, one army only had a single person, while the other army had dozens of strong and ferocious crimson-eyed wolves. The difference in numbers was extremely great. However, Chu Mu, who was all alone, had an extremely fierce aura. He was like a divine sword that had been unsheathed, and he was not inferior to the ferocious aura of the dozens of red-eyed wolves. Their auras collided and approached each other. The scarlet blood sword was unsheathed. The crimson sword light was like a bolt of red lightning streaking across the dark sky. It made a tearing sound, and the red light was dazzling. His sword was unsheathed, slicing through the body of a crimson-eyed wolf before continuing forward. It was like a hot knife through butter, unstoppable and unstoppable. Everything would be destroyed. At this moment, it was as if Chu Mu was the ferocious wolf, and the group of red-eyed wolves were weak lambs. The dozens of crimson-eyed wolves surrounded Chu Mu. They were so densely packed that no wind could pass through them. One could only vaguely see the dazzling red sword light flickering like lightning within the pack of wolves. The terrifying tearing sound of air was sharp and ear-piercing. A few claw shadows pierced through the air and landed on Chu Mu's body. However, they were completely blocked by the wolf shadow armor. They could not break through it and could not even damage it. Chu Mu only needed to focus on dodging the attacks of the 8 crimson-eyed battle wolves. He also needed to be careful not to let the attacks hit his head. This greatly reduced the pressure he faced. The crimson blood sword was indeed very sharp. It did not need to be infused with sword intent, nor did it need to be infused with the gold force. It did not even need to use the power of vibration. The tip of the sword could easily cut through the skin of the crimson-eyed wolves, as if it was cutting through a thin piece of paper. Even the tough skin of the crimson-eyed battle wolves could be cut open. However, with the support of sword intent, it was as easy as cutting through a thin piece of paper. Chu Mu concluded that the crimson blood sword, with the support of sword intent and gold force, was enough to cut through the skin of the crimson-eyed wolf king. Slash. 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 The last crimson-eyed battle wolf had also died under Chu Mu's crimson blood sword. Streaks of void chi emerged from the carcasses of the crimson-eyed wolves. There were more than 60 strong crimson-eyed wolves, so there were more than 60 streaks of first-grade void chi. As for the 8 crimson-eyed battle wolves, there were more than 30 streaks of first-grade void chi. This pack of crimson-eyed wolves had given Chu Mu exactly 100 streaks of void chi. 100 streaks of void chi. Chu Mu absorbed them one by one and refined them into inner chi. After refining one streak of void chi, his inner chi reached the peak of level 9. It was daytime now. Chu Mu did not dare to practice the beginner chi cultivation technique in case he was attacked again. Therefore, he absorbed another 10 streaks of first-grade void chi. His inner chi shrank, expanded, and exploded, becoming purer. The familiar feeling returned once again. His talent points increased by 1,000 to 7,000. Zhu Tiantong, who was in second place, increased his talent points to 5,000 not long ago. Chun Gang also increased his talent points. Now, the gap between him and Chu Mu was widened again. Zhu Tiantong, Chun Gang, and the others already knew why Yang Xian's ranking fell. However, they were in a hurry to improve themselves. It was impossible for them to waste time looking for Chu Mu. For the time being, they put their revenge on hold. Now that they knew Chu Mu's talent points had increased, their faces were a little gloomy. Being trampled on by such a person always felt very uncomfortable, especially when it was someone who had an indirect grudge against them. It was even more uncomfortable. Tell the others to pay attention to Chu Mu's whereabouts, Zhu Tiantong said. Among the more than 30,000 people in the Dark Knight tribe, there were nearly 1,000 disciples of the Dark Knight sword sect. It was more than 4 times the number of the 5 Elements sword sect. It was the largest group in the Dark Knight tribe. These people had their own talent points. They formed small teams and were distributed in different parts of the wilderness. But now, due to the limited conditions, it was difficult for the small teams to communicate with each other. They were not well informed. His chi cultivation had recovered to the first sky, and his body cultivation was at level 6. There were still 89 strands of level 1 illusory chi left. After thinking for a while, Chu Mu left 9 strands of level 1 illusory chi around the fingers of his left hand, and absorbed the other 80 strands. A strong heat flow surged in his body and rushed to his limbs and bones. His body moved without wind, and his black hair fluttered. An aura rose from Chu Mu's body. It was getting stronger and stronger, and sand and pebbles were flying everywhere. First, he improved his body cultivation to the peak of level 9 of the first sky. After consuming 40 strands of level 1 illusory chi from Chu Mu, the remaining 40 strands of level 1 illusory chi were converted into internal chi, which kept circulating in his meridians. After absorbing all of them, his chi cultivation had reached level 4 of the first sky. His strength was even more powerful. Even if he encountered the red-eyed Wolf King again, he could easily kill it without suffering any damage. To Chu Mu, the outer valley of the Wolf Valley was no longer a challenge. He did not have the hobby of bullying the weak. His goal was to challenge the strong. Moving forward, Chu Mu soon found the entrance to the inner valley behind a few boulders. The reason he could find it so quickly was related to the map in the illustrated handbook of low-grade illusory beasts that the shopkeeper of the bookstore gave him. After passing through the long and narrow passageway and entering the inner valley of the Wolf Valley, Chu Mu felt the wildness in the air. It was at least 10 times stronger than in the outer valley. This was the first time someone had entered the inner valley. The ironback wolves inside had never been killed before. The moment Chu Mu appeared, he immediately discovered that he was being stared at. 2 pairs of oily green eyes were icy cold, causing people to feel a chill. It was a low growl unique to wolves, sounding extremely ferocious. Its green skin had a metallic texture, and its nose bridge was wrinkled. As it growled, it trembled, making its green eyes seem even more ferocious. Its fur was gray. Compared to the red-eyed wolf, it was sparser and looked somewhat soft. Its most distinctive feature was its back. It was very prominent, looking like a dragon's bone. It was a rank 2 illusory beast, an ironback wolf. When the 2 ironback wolves discovered Chu Mu, they let out a low growl and rushed over. They were extremely fast, like 2 gusts of wind. They were at least 50% faster than the red-eyed wolf. Chu Mu also stared at the 2 ironback wolves. His eyes flickered with an incomparably sharp light. He adjusted his breathing and was ready to attack at any time. The ironback wolves were rank 2 illusory beasts. Their claws were extremely sharp and might injure the wolf's shadow armor. Chu Mu was not willing to take them head-on. In a short span of 3 breaths, the 2 ironback wolves were like 2 gusts of wind. They actually knew how to coordinate with each other and attacked Chu Mu from the left and right. The scarlet blood sword was unsheathed. Its red light exploded, tearing through the dark sky like lightning. He slashed at the ironback wolf on the left. The ironback wolf's reaction was extremely fast. Its body paused, causing the scarlet blood sword to brush past its nose. Then, it suddenly pounced. Its terrifying claws attacked with a gust of wind, almost tearing Chu Mu apart. The ironback wolf on the right had already reached him with its claws. His footsteps crisscrossed, and he instantly dodged. The scarlet blood sword once again slashed out, breaking apart the claws of the ironback wolf on the left and slashing at the ironback wolf on the right. The ironback wolf's reaction was fast, but it was still a step too slow. Its head was sliced by the terrifying sword. Amidst an obscure sound, its green skin was cut open and blood spurted out. It did not die, but its ferocious nature was unleashed. The vibrational energy was activated, and Chu Mu slashed out again. The terrifying energy instantly split open the ironback wolf's skull. The other ironback wolf attacked, but Chu Mu seized the opportunity to spin his body and dodge. Borrowing the force of his body's rotation, he slashed out with a tyrannical sword. His sword intent, metal energy, and vibrational energy were all added to his sword. The incomparably sharp sword broke open the ironback wolf's body, cutting 3 inches in from its neck all the way down to its tail. The 2 ironback wolves allowed Chu Mu to understand the strength of the ironback wolves. Compared to the scarlet-eyed battle wolves, they were indeed much stronger. However, compared to the scarlet-eyed Wolf King, they were still a little weaker. However, this was normal. Although the scarlet-eyed Wolf King was a rank 1 void beast, it was still the king of the scarlet-eyed wolf clan. It was not strange for it to be stronger than a rank 2 void beast. The biggest reason for being able to kill the 2 ironback wolves so easily was the scarlet blood sword. Its sharpness was astonishing. If he had used the black iron sword, even if he could kill the 2 ironback wolves in the end, he would have to pay a price. Chapter 12:25. At noon, the scorching sun hung high in the sky, emitting thousands of rays of golden light. Each ray was like a sword, piercing through the sky and sprinkling over the earth. Colorful halos flowed within the light swords. The stream was clear, connecting the inner and outer valleys. A figure squatted beside the stream, cupping the water to wash his face before taking a big gulp. After eating his rations, filling his stomach and drinking his water, Chu Mu sat beside the stream, looking around and looking at the light in the sky. When it was time to rest, he still needed to rest. There was a balance between tension and relaxation, otherwise it would be detrimental to his cultivation. Since entering the inner valleys, Chu Mu had killed 6 ironback wolves and obtained 6 strands of second-grade void qi. He had absorbed and refined these 6 strands of second-grade void qi into inner qi, allowing his inner qi to reach the peak of the first heavenly layer. Now, he was only 1 step away from the second heavenly layer. This step was not so easy to take, but Chu Mu was confident that he could complete this step in the inner valleys of the Wolf Valley. After resting for a while, Chu Mu did not get up, but drew his sword and waved it. Now that he had mastered the power of metal and the power of fire, he could only add the power of metal to his sword during battle. He could also add the power of fire, but he still couldn't add the power of metal and the power of fire at the same time, which was very difficult. If he could add the power of metal, fire, and vibration to his sword, the power of each sword would increase significantly. Its destructive power would not be inferior to a first-grade sword art. Chu Mu was working hard in this direction. The more he cultivated and improved, the more he found that there were more aspects to improve. Gradually, he began to feel that there was not enough time. After trying for a while, he was still unable to coexist the power of metal and fire at the same time. If he could not solve this problem, he could forget about creating a sword art that mainly used the power of metal and fire. Alternating the use of the 2 powers, trying to coexist as much as possible. Maybe when the time comes I can really do it. Muttering to himself, he got up, sheathed the scarlet blood sword, and continued forward. It was unknown whether Chu Mu's luck was good or bad. This time, he encountered 3 ironback wolves. No, it should be 2 ironback wolves, plus an even taller and stronger ironback wolf with dark green skin. It was an elite ironback wolf called the ironback blue wolf. The ironback blue wolf and the 2 ironback wolves dashed over. Chu Mu also dashed over, rapidly approaching. His body leaned forward, and the 5 fingers of his right hand moved subconsciously. His legs almost turned into rolling wheels, bringing up a trail of smoke and dust, like a giant python turning over. With a chi sound like an arrow leaving the bow, a dazzling and demonic red light flickered. It was incomparably violent. As the sword leaped, it was like a thunderbolt, incomparably fast and incomparably sharp. With a slight sound, the sword left a faint golden mark in the air. The ironback blue wolf's reaction was extremely fast. It leapt up, causing Chu Mu's sword to miss. Then, it pounced in the air, its terrifying claws drawing several scars in the air, glinting with a biting cold light. Lowering his body, his strength erupted once again. His speed suddenly increased as he rushed forward. Not only did he cause the ironback blue wolf's claws to miss, he also rushed towards the 2 ironback wolves. The scarlet blood sword exploded with a tyrannical might, the sword intent, metal force, and vibration force all added together. With a chi sound, the sword cut open the body of one of the ironback wolves. His whole body rushed forward, heavily stomping on the ground. Dust flew into the air. His body paused, and he abruptly twisted his body. His strength erupted, and his sword pierced out once again. The red light was blazing like lightning. Just as the ironback wolf turned around, the demonic and dazzling red sword light arrived like a bolt of lightning. With a chi sound, it directly pierced through the ironback wolf's neck. Of the two ironback wolves, one was killed, and the other was heavily injured. It did not have much fighting strength left. Chu-Mu quickly followed up with another strike, killing it. Then, he faced the ironback blue wolf directly. The scarlet blood sword trembled. With an ear-piercing sword cry, it turned into a red bolt of lightning with a whoosh. It was incomparably demonic as it brazenly pierced towards the ironback blue wolf. The ironback blue wolf's green eyes narrowed slightly. It madly rushed over, raising its sharp claws and slashing at the red light. The huge force of the collision caused the sword to tremble violently. It also caused Chu-Mu's forward momentum to pause. The ironback blue wolf's body also trembled. The power of Chu-Mu's sword was an explosion of inner chi, as well as physical strength. It was extremely powerful. The ironback blue wolf felt a stabbing pain from its claws, but its ferocious nature made it ignore it. It suddenly leapt up and viciously bit at Chu-Mu. A fishy smell assailed his nostrils. Shifting his feet, he quickly dodged and slashed out with the scarlet blood sword. Following that, in the battle with the ironback blue wolf, Chu-Mu's metal force and fire force intertwined and supported the scarlet blood sword, constantly blocking and counterattacking. The ironback blue wolf's strength was much stronger than the red-eyed wolf king's. Its skin was also tougher than the wolf king's. Even with the scarlet blood sword's sharpness and the support of the three forces, it was difficult to cause much damage to the ironback blue wolf. The current situation was slightly better than when he fought the red-eyed wolf king. After all, the ironback blue wolf had not mastered any beast technique. If it had, then it would be troublesome. Even so, the ironback blue wolf was still rather miserable. Its body was covered in wounds, dripping with blood. It was a ghastly sight, as if Chu-Mu was abusing it. The ironback blue wolf had an amazing recovery ability. As time passed, the wounds on its body healed little by little. This was a very good opponent. Chu-Mu was using it to train his swordsmanship and everything else, working hard to increase his combat ability. When he felt that it was about time, Chu-Mu seized an opportunity and used the armor-piercing sword technique. The golden-red sword light condensed into a line, piercing through the sky. In an instant it tore through the ironback blue wolf's skull and pierced through its body, killing it. As expected, killing the first ironback blue wolf brought Chu-Mu some benefit. Other than the 4 rank 2 void chi, there was also an orange ball of light. Chu-Mu quickly grabbed the orange ball of light and absorbed it. Suddenly, information appeared, and a figure appeared in his mind. It quickly stepped out, step by step. It looked very delicate and varied. Intermediate step technique. When Chu-Mu finished digesting the contents of the intermediate step technique, he felt that his understanding of the step technique had deepened. He followed the figure in his mind and took a few steps. He felt more agile and flexible, with more variations. His step technique attainment directly increased. Footwork was also divided into beginner, intermediate, and advanced. There was no rule stating that one had to first learn beginner footwork in order to learn intermediate footwork, because beginner footwork was already included in intermediate footwork. All of them were included in advanced footwork. Getting it was one thing, and using it was another. Chu-Mu started practicing on the spot. His comprehension was very strong, and his control of his body was amazing. Advancing, retreating, left, right, and crisscrossing, he quickly grasped the strength and depth of each force. In just half an hour, Chu-Mu had mastered the intermediate step technique. If he wanted to be more familiar with it, he could only improve it in battle. This time, not only did he get an intermediate step technique, he also got 6 rank 2 void chi. He only needed 10 rank 2 void chi to break through to the second heavenly layer of chi. If he had 20 rank 2 void chi, then he could reach the second heavenly layer of chi. After this battle, some of his strength and inner chi were consumed. Chu-Mu did not absorb the 6 rank 2 void chi. Instead, he sat down and recovered his strength and inner chi. After a period of time, his strength recovered. Chu Mu wrapped the 6 rank 2 void qi around the fingers of his left hand. After gathering 10 rank 2 void qi, he would absorb them in one go and break through the bottleneck, reaching the 2nd heavenly layer. The Wolf Valley did not lack ironback wolves. Chu Mu, who had obtained the intermediate step technique, was like a tiger that had grown wings. 15 minutes later, he got another 4 rank 2 void qi. A total of 10 rank 2 void qi. After finding a relatively safe place, Chu Mu sat down cross-legged and directly absorbed the 10 streams of rank 2 void qi. They turned into a strong flow of heat that flowed throughout his body. Chu Mu hurriedly circulated the elementary qi cultivating technique and guided this strong flow of heat into his inner qi. This allowed his inner qi, which had already reached the peak of 1st heavenly layer, to reach a higher level. A roar sounded. His consciousness was in a trance and returned to normal in an instant. Then, Chu Mu looked inside himself and found that the inner qi in his meridians was rushing to his dantian. Before the 1st heavenly layer of qi training, the inner qi was scattered in the meridians. At the 1st heavenly layer, the inner qi was collected into one and also existed in the meridians. At the 2nd heavenly layer, the inner qi was poured into the dantian. It was no longer rootless and had a sense of stability. The inner qi of the 2nd heavenly layer was purer and more powerful. Qi training has reached the 2nd heavenly layer. You have gained 2,000 genius points. A fleeting voice sounded. Chu Mu's genius points increased from 7,000 to 9,000. In a spurt of energy, I will also break through to the 2nd heavenly layer. Secretly, he got up and exhaled a mouthful of turbid qi. Chu Mu made the first movement of the intermediate body refining technique. After making the first movement, he held it for a quarter of an hour. When the heat flow reached a certain level, Chu Mu quickly changed to the second movement and continued to hold it for a quarter of an hour, making the heat flow even more intense. When practicing the body refining technique, his eyes could still see ahead and his perception could still feel the movements around him. However, if he was attacked, he would have to stop the body refining technique. There would not be any harm. In this aspect, it was better than the qi training technique. It was just that it took more time to practice, so there were pros and cons. Perhaps Chu Mu's luck was good. Up until the 9th movement, there were no ironback wolves around him, nor did he encounter any attacks. On the 9th movement, the heat flow was incomparably strong. It was as if the water of a river was unceasingly washing through his muscles. Over and over again, each movement gave Chu Mu a feeling. It was as if the muscles all over his body were being washed by this heat flow, becoming even more compact, even more tenacious, and even more powerful. A feeling of tightness gradually pervaded the air. When the heat flow was at its strongest, it suddenly exploded. It was as if a small dragon was attacking his limbs and bones. A powerful aura suddenly erupted from Chu Mu's body. The impact sent the surrounding sand and stones flying. It was as if there was a flame burning on Chu Mu's body. Body refining has reached the 2nd heavenly layer. You have gained 2,000 genius points. The fleeting voice sounded again. The outside world was shaken because of this. Chapter 12:26. The flow of time in the azure sky illusionary world was different from the outside world. A few days in the azure sky illusionary world were only a few hours in the outside world. Within a few hours, the galaxy genius ranking had changed rapidly, shocking everyone. What's going on? Why did it increase by 2,000 points? The people of the Night Nether Galaxy were all shocked. They stared with wide eyes at the name at the top of the list and the number of genius points next to it. 11,000. Zhu Tiantong, who was in second place, had 5,000 points. Chungang, who was in third place, also had 5,000 points. Between 5,000 and 11,000, there was a difference of 6,000 points. This was almost an insurmountable gap. Zhu Tiantong and Chungang's faces became very unsightly. They were left so far behind in such a short time. It was unimaginable and unacceptable. Deputy Sect Leader Xiang, this disciple of the Five Elements Sword Sect is not bad, right? Baiqiong's voice was filled with joy and a hint of mockery. This made Xiang Ye's face turn ugly. For a moment, even with Xiang Ye's thick skin, he felt his face burning, as if he had been slapped twice. He didn't know what to say. No matter what he said, the truth was right in front of him. There was a gap of 6,000 genius points, not 1 or 2,000. If he wanted to catch up, the difficulty would be as high as the sky. Basically, if nothing unexpected happened, Zhu Tiantong and Chen Gang were destined to be trampled under Chu Mu's feet. There was no way they could surpass him. The disciples of the Five Elements Sword Sect were all so excited that they almost overturned the mountain peak. The disciples of the Zhentian Peak all puffed out their chests. They were full of confidence, which made them even more envious. The saints couldn't help but feel a little regretful. Why didn't they try harder to rope in Chu Mu? Even if they couldn't rope him in, they should have tried their best to be on good terms with him. Now, it seemed like there was no chance to rope him in, but it was still possible to be on good terms with him. Then, there was an even bigger commotion. Chu Mu, whose points had exceeded 10,000 and reached 11,000, had his name flashing continuously on the Heaven Ascension list. He kept moving up and finally, miraculously, he reached the 10th place. The first place of the Heaven Ascension list was still Gu Luankong, the second place was still Qin Aoxian, and the third place was still Yang Zhantian. There were no changes. Chu Mu was originally in the 80s, but later on, he dropped out of the Heaven Ascension list. This was because the Heaven Ascension list only recorded 1,000 names. After that, Chu Mu's name once again rushed up the Heaven Ascension list, and every now and then, it would rise a little. The competition on the Heaven Ascension list was much more intense than on the Galaxy Genius list. Rising and falling, the changes were extremely fast. It was not easy for Chu Mu to be able to go against the current. Now, when he broke through to the second heavenly layer in the Azure Sky virtual world, it took more than 2 hours. However, in the outside world, it was only a very short period of time. In an instant, he had gained 4,000 genius points, causing Chu Mu's name to seem to have become one with his sword as it shot through the 9 heavens. Cutting through thistles and thorns like a hot knife through butter, he forcibly made his way into the top 10, squeezing out the 10th place. The 10th ranked genius was called Su Yueshi. She was a proud and arrogant genius. Originally, she had been working hard to improve her ranking. She had rushed to the 10th place and was planning to go higher. However, she didn't expect that someone would push her down to the 11th place. Su Yueshi's genius points were exactly 10,000. She was 1,000 points away from Chu Mu and 1,000 points away from the 9th place. As for Gu Luankong, who was at the top of the list, his genius points had reached 16,000. He was far in the lead. Chu Mu's name entered the 10th place of the Heaven Ascension list and attracted even more attention. Everyone was discussing the background of this person who had suddenly reached the 10th place. He is indeed our 10th God's child. He can compete with the top great emperor's descendant. At the main God's Hall, the elders smiled. The God's child of God's Hall did have an extremely high status. His talent was also the best. However, in this era where Sword God had fallen, the great emperors were the strongest. Those who were chosen by the great emperors to be their descendants were all extraordinarily talented. Some might be slightly weaker than the God's child, some might be on par with the God's child, but there were also some who were slightly better than the God's child. However, this was not absolute. However, it was a fact that some of the great emperor's descendants were in the top 10. When Chu Mu reached the 10th place, the other God's children had not. The most powerful one, Guan Lin, had only reached the 13th place. It felt like the top 10 was a watershed. The top 3 was even more so. Good job, youngest. Go, 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 get into the top 3. Feng Guohai was ranked 38. It was very difficult for him to move up one place. He was a little troubled that no God's child had entered the top 10. Suddenly, He felt that Chu Mu's ranking had shot up to the 10th place. He was overjoyed. Youngest is so powerful. I can't fall too far behind. The other gods' children were motivated, as if they had been greatly motivated and worked even harder. A powerful force surged within his body. As his cultivation base broke through, his thinking speed increased greatly. His thinking ability was enhanced, his sixth senses were sharper, and his reflexes were faster. At this moment the sun was setting. The color of the blood-red sky gradually faded, invaded by a trace of darkness. The last ray of light disappeared into the western horizon. Night had fallen. The cool breeze blew gently. Waves of wolf howls could be heard from afar. When night fell, the void beasts seemed to have received an unexpected power. They all went berserk, their strength multiplied. The inner valley was more dangerous than the outer valley at night. However, Chu Mu, whose strength had obviously increased, was not afraid. He continued to move forward. Since night had just fallen, his eyes could still see his surroundings clearly. His sharp gaze swept across the area, taking in everything around him clearly. Today was the 4th day since he had entered the Azure Sky virtual world. There were still more than 20 days before the 1-month deadline. There was more than enough time, and Chu Mu was not in a hurry. When the time came, if he did not have any first-grade void chi, he would return it to the bookstore owner with second-grade void chi. He would probably be happier. 400 strands of first-grade void chi were equivalent to 40 strands of second-grade void chi. It would not be difficult to kill 40 ironback wolves. With his current strength of the second firmament, killing an ironback blue wolf was not that difficult. After going berserk, the ironback wolf's strength increased at a faster rate, and its wildness increased. As soon as it discovered Chu Mu's figure, it immediately dashed toward him, its demonic aura filling the air. The crimson sword light was like a waterfall that pierced through the sky, tearing apart the thin darkness. The ironback wolf's green eyes were unknowingly covered with a layer of faint red. Chu Mu was not afraid at all, his face as cold as steel. He raised the crimson blood sword, and the demonic red sword light exploded. Even after going berserk at night, the ironback wolf's strength had doubled, but it was still not Chu Mu's opponent. This was because Chu Mu had broken through to the second firmament, and his strength had increased by more and more. Kill. One sword kill. Another strand of second-grade void chi was in his hands. Chu Mu was not arrogant enough to go deep into the inner valley, because he guessed that there would be a wolf king in the inner valley, just like the outer valley. The strength of the ironback wolf king was much stronger than that of the ironback blue wolf, especially at night. Due to going berserk, the ironback wolf king's strength had multiplied, and it was even stronger than a third-grade elite void beast. Other than the ironback wolf king, there might also be many ironback blue wolves and strong ironback wolves. Their numbers were not small. It was better to hunt from the periphery, encountering an ironback wolf, fighting and killing it. The ironback wolf was a second-grade void beast. After going berserk, its blood seemed to contain even more power. After absorbing it, the crimson blood sword became even more demonic, and the red light was dazzling. At this point, Chu Mu had killed another 10 ironback wolves and obtained 10 strands of second-rank void aura, which he directly absorbed. Unfortunately, after reaching the second layer of the realm, the second-rank void aura's effect on him had once again decreased. Originally, one strand could increase his strength by 500 kilograms. Now, one strand could only increase his strength by 50 kilograms. He had to kill a third-grade void beast and obtain third-grade void chi before he could enjoy another strand of 1000 gene increase in strength. However, if he wanted to hunt a third-grade void beast, he would have to go deeper into the wilderness. At that time, he would have to make more preparations. Otherwise, going back and forth would waste a lot of time. For now, it was better to obediently hunt second-grade void beast. 10 strands of second-grade void chi only strengthened Chu Mu's physique a little, reaching half a layer of the second firmament. His strength had reached 21,000 gene, and his strength had increased. There was nothing he could do about it. The difference between the second firmament and the third firmament was 20,000 gene of strength. An increase of 2,000 gene would be considered a layer. They encountered another iron-back blue wolf. The berserk iron-back blue wolf was twice as strong. Fortunately, Chu Mu's dual cultivation had broken through to the second layer. Otherwise, facing a berserk iron-back blue wolf, it would truly be hard to deal with. The iron-back wolf was strong, but Chu Mu was stronger. After an intense battle, Chu Mu grasped the opportunity and executed the armor-breaking sword art, killing the ironback wolf. There was nothing he could do about it. The berserk ironback wolf's skin was tougher, and its defense was stronger. It was harder for the crimson blood sword to break through. Good luck came. 6 strands of second-grade void chi and a ball of silver light. He quickly grabbed the ball of silver light and absorbed it. Immediately, information appeared, and a silver figure appeared in his mind, holding a sharp sword. It was a sword art. It was not a special sword art, but a sublimation of the basic sword art. It was an enhancement of the basic sword art. The application of the sword art was more comprehensive, more in-depth, more flexible, and more profound. Medial grade sword art. After obtaining the medial grade sword art, Chu Mu quickly digested it. He felt that his understanding of sword arts had increased by another level. His attainments were deeper, his horizons were broader, and his thoughts were clearer. A medial grade sword art was worth 1,000 strands of second-grade void chi. It was many times more valuable than the 6 strands of second-grade void chi. After absorbing the 6 strands of second-grade void chi, his strength increased by 600 gene, reaching 21,600 gene. He was one step closer to the first layer of the second firmament. Chapter 12:27. Unknowingly, it was already late at night. The moon was bright and the stars were sparse. The hook-like moon hung high in the sky, emitting a faint white brilliance. This brilliance was like water, faintly spreading across the earth. It was as if everything on the ground was covered in a layer of gauze, giving it a hazy sense of beauty. Even so, one's line of sight was greatly affected. Looking into the distance, one could only see vague shadows. After absorbing another 4 strands of second-grade void energy, Chu Mu's body transformation cultivation rose once more. He finally reached the first level of the second layered heavens, possessing 22,000 genes of strength. After absorbing the blood of the ironback wolf, the red color of the scarlet blood sword became even more vibrant. The light it emitted was even more pure and demonic. Perhaps the scarlet blood sword will complete its first evolution here. Chu Mu sat on a boulder, his sword fingers stroking the scarlet blood sword's body. He could feel the traces of icy coldness as he thought to himself. The strength of a swordsman was composed of many aspects. Swords were one of them. If 2 swordsmen were similar in all aspects, but one wielded an ordinary sword and the other wielded a treasure sword, there would be a difference in strength. Just think about it. If someone else's sword could break your sword, leaving you with no sword to use, wouldn't your strength drop by a level? Even if your sword wasn't broken, then if your ordinary sword struck your opponent, you would only be lightly injured or heavily injured. But if you were struck by your opponent's sword, you would definitely be heavily injured or even die on the spot. If the Scarlet Blood Sword could evolve into a third-grade Void Spirit Sword, then it would be much easier to deal with the Ironback Blue Wolf. Perhaps it might even be able to injure the Ironback Wolf King. Hunting void beasts to obtain void energy was important, but other aspects were also important. After experiencing the ups and downs of these past few days, Chu Mu vaguely grasped some of the intentions of the Azure Sky Void World. It wasn't purely for those who entered to increase their cultivation. Instead, it looked at a person's innate talent, potential, and so on. To put it bluntly, it was composed of various aspects. For example, cultivation, perception, battle talent, and so on. Thus, increasing one's cultivation wasn't the only way. Instead, it was the combination of various aspects that was the way to go. Chu Mu was currently at the entrance to the inner valley. Because of Chu Mu's hunting, there were no ironback blue wolves roaming around here. It was relatively safe, which was conducive to Chu Mu's comprehension. First, he reflected on today's battle. Then, he practiced the intermediate footwork and intermediate swordsmanship a few times. Then, he combined the intermediate footwork and intermediate swordsmanship. After that, he tried to add the gold force and the fire force to his sword. When he tried, Chu Mu discovered that they could coexist for an extremely short period of time. He was pleasantly surprised by this discovery. Chu Mu didn't know if it was because he had broken through to the second celestial layer, or because he had mastered the intermediate sword art, or both. Seeing hope, Chu Mu worked even harder. He continuously swung his sword, and the scarlet blood sword flashed with a golden light, as well as a red light. That wasn't the red of the scarlet blood sword, but the red of fire energy. In an instant, the golden light and the red light both dissipated. The time they could coexist was too short. After all, the gold force and the fire force were different kinds of energy. They didn't have a relationship with each other. In fact, the fire force countered the gold force, so it was even harder to fuse them. No matter how difficult it was, Chu Mu still had to try. After trying for an hour, he still didn't succeed. The night deepened. Chu Mu put down the scarlet blood sword and rested for a while. He raised his head and looked at the sky. The white moon shone with a pure white radiance that was as cold as water. The sparse starlight flickered like a blink of an eye. The sky was vast, and the scenery was distant. Chu Mu relaxed his mind. Unknowingly, he lay down and leaned against a slanted rock, using his left hand as a pillow behind his head. Since entering the azure sky ethereal world, this was the first time he was so relaxed and carefree. In the distance, wolf howls came one after another. However, they gradually faded away, as if they were drifting, as if they were in a dream. As Zhang Xian watched on, a streak of light suddenly appeared and streaked across the sky, disappearing in the blink of an eye. That was a meteor. Not long after, another meteor streaked across the sky. After a few dozen breaths, a third meteor streaked across the sky. Tonight was like the time of a meteor race. Meteors streaked across the sky one after another. In less than 15 minutes, Chu Mu actually saw 10 meteors streaking across the sky. As he watched, Chu Mu became intoxicated. The sky seemed to have disappeared, leaving only the meteors flashing by. Perhaps it was because he was focused on watching, but the meteors seemed to be magnified in front of him, and their trajectories became clearer. It was burning with raging flames. Those flames were golden red in color and had a terrifyingly high temperature. It was as if it could burn everything into ashes. Within that golden color, there was a terrifying sharpness that seemed to be able to cut through everything. There was nothing that could not be broken. As he watched, Chu Mu's eyes widened. His eyes did not move, as if they were frozen. After a long time, when there were no more meteors in the night sky, Chu Mu's eyes trembled and regained their vigor. He quickly stood up and muttered to himself, as if he was in deep thought. In essence, meteors are actually fragments of meteorites or planet. They contain metal and streak across the sky at high speed. The intense friction with the air will generate heat, producing a terrifyingly high-temperature flame. As he muttered to himself, the thoughts in his mind gradually became clearer. Since it is difficult for me to add the power of metal and fire to the sword at the same time, why don't I imitate this method and try it out? Carefully comprehending and constantly simulating, eliminating all kinds of drawbacks, he headed in the right direction. When he was almost done comprehending, Chu Mu once again raised the scarlet blood sword, circulated his energy, and stabbed out. This time, with the power of metal, the sword produced friction with the air. However, due to the speed limit, the temperature produced by the friction was not very high. After thinking for a while, Chu Mu stabbed out again. This time, the speed of the sword was much faster. This was because Chu Mu had used the power of vibration. It instantly surged into his arm, producing a huge driving force, causing the speed of the sword to increase. At the same time, the vibration of the sword body at a high frequency increased the friction between the sword body and the air. In an instant, a pale red flame appeared on the sword body, swaying. However, before Chu Mu could activate the power of fire, the flame had already been extinguished. At least Chu Mu knew that he was going in the right direction, but his control was not enough. He continued to cultivate, swinging out sword after sword. After each swing, he paused for a while to think, allowing his strength to gradually recover. The night gradually faded, and a ray of dawn jumped out from the eastern horizon, announcing the arrival of a new day. Every day the geniuses were improving. On the Galaxy Genius list, Zhu Tiantong and Chen Gang's talent points had reached 6,000. On the Heaven Ascension list, Su Yueshi's talent points had reached 11,000, the same as Chu Mu. However, because she was one step slower, she was still ranked 11th. Until dawn, Chu Mu still had not succeeded in achieving his goal because it was too difficult. However, after repeated attempts, he became more and more familiar with it. As long as he continued to work hard, it would not take long for him to succeed. At that time, not only would he be able to make every swing of his sword carry 4 types of power, making ordinary sword technique stronger, he was even confident that he would be able to create a new sword technique that contained 3 types of power, a 3rd-grade sword technique. At dawn, Chu Mu stopped cultivating, picked up dry food and water, and ate a full meal. Then, he recovered the energy he had used to practice the sword. Today was the 5th day in the Azure Virtual World, and the food was almost used up. Tonight, he had to return to the Night Tribe. However, before he returned, he wanted to kill more ironback wolves to obtain more virtual chi. If possible, he wanted to see the might of the Ironback Wolf King. He jumped down from the boulder, took a step, and ran quickly toward the depths of the valley. The night passed, and the Ironback wolves came out of their berserk state. Their strength returned to its original level, and they posed no threat to Chu Mu. As if he had entered an uninhabited land, he moved forward. Wherever he passed, no wolf could stop his sword. Not long after, Chu Mu killed another 10 ironback wolves and absorbed 10 strands of 2nd-grade virtual chi to strengthen his body and increase his strength to 23,000 caddies. The higher one's cultivation, the harder it was to improve, because more resources were needed. From nothingness to the 1st celestial layer, and then from the 1st celestial layer to the 2nd celestial layer, it was only 10,000 caddies. However, from the 2nd celestial layer to the 3rd celestial layer, it was 20,000 caddies, and from the 3rd celestial layer to the 4th celestial layer, it was 40,000 caddies. Another iron-back blue wolf. This iron-back blue wolf that didn't go berserk didn't take more than 2 or 3 strikes before it was cleanly killed by Chu Mu. Chu Mu, who had mastered intermediate footwork and sword arts, was even more agile and his sword arts were even sharper. Unfortunately, this ironback wolf only provided 4 strands of 2nd-grade virtual chi, and did not provide any light balls. 4 strands of 2nd-grade virtual chi was better than nothing. After absorbing them, Chu Mu continued to move forward. Now, when he used his sword to kill ironback wolves, he would often try to find a better way to combine the power of gold and fire. Fortunately, the strength of the ironback wolves was low, and could not pose a threat to him. This allowed Chu Mu to be more relaxed and try. Although he hadn't succeeded, Chu Mu was able to create a sword technique by chance. It was a 1st-rank sword technique based on the power of fire. Unfortunately, he didn't obtain any talent points. Chu Mu guessed that it was because he had created a 2nd-rank sword technique that he couldn't obtain any talent points for sword techniques lower than 2nd rank. If this was true, then after creating a 3rd-rank sword technique, he wouldn't be able to obtain any talent points for creating a 2nd-rank sword technique. Using this 1st-grade sword art as a foundation, Chu Mu integrated the power of vibration. After dozens of attempts, he successfully created a new second-grade sword art. Self-created second-grade sword art successful, received 2,000 talent points. The fleeting voice sounded again. Then, on the Heaven Ascension list, Chu Mu's ranking directly rose, squeezing the 9th place down. He had the same number of talent points as the 8th place, 13,000 points. When this sword was slashed out, the sword seemed to transform into a flame bombardment. Then, there was a second bombardment, which Chu Mu named Double Flame Kill. As the name suggested, it was a sword attack with 2 layers of flames.